Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбаєння різні потужні ракети, машини залізні у нас на всі боєння різні потужні ракети, машини залізні у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and we're here. And of course, I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 463 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on this brand new week, and we've got a lot of crazy stuff. In fact, not only is the main news crazy about what is happening as far as the war is concerned, again, as Russia is once again being invaded at this moment, we can also see that we got to see some stuff on the front lines, like a Pantsir being attacked, from the Russian perspective of them getting hit. We've never seen video footage like that before, and it actually came from multiple crew members that were filming at the same time. So with that, we're going to be moving right into this news, but before we do, I would like to make a quick little disclaimer tonight that once again in our 10-minute countdown, we are seeing a massive amount of lag. I don't really know if we're going through it right now, and let me check, and it appears that we're not. But I would like to give y'all a little bit of a lag alert warning tonight that we may be suspecting a high chance of lag showers or maybe even lag storms. It has seemed to become even more and more prevalent as a situation in the background continues to develop, and so we have a pretty good idea that that may be the reason for the lag. And so if you don't want those folks to win, make sure to stick around on the stream and just to hit the like button, and that pretty much shows those folks that no matter what they do, there's no way that they can win. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our Ukraine news. And starting off at the Kerch Bridge, because we're going to give you all a little bit of an appetizer tonight. It didn't get blown up. No, it didn't. But we did get to see some pictures today that were taken from a train passing over the railroad bridge segment, and they looked over at the road bridge segment, and they saw something really interesting developing on the bottom of that bridge. So this is one of the pillars of the Kerch Road Bridge right here, and when we take a look at the Kerch Bridge on a Google map, you can actually see these little pillars. They are spaced out right below the bridge, right down in the shadow, right below there. And what's very interesting about these pillars is that they are the load-bearing part of the structure that holds up the road span up the bridge. And as you can see in this picture, visible on both sides are some very large and clear stress fractures that have begun to form here on this specific pillar. And when we move on to the next picture, you can see these aren't just the seams of the concrete or anything like that. This is actually straight up stress fracturing. That thing is almost about to come apart at the seams, and you can visibly see that right here. Now, why in the world would that matter? Well, the reason why is that from what we understand before, when the Kerch Bridge was blown up around October of last year, it appeared as though the damage was caused entirely to the actual road segments of the bridge, not really the load-bearing pillars that hold the bridge up. It appears, however, that the Russian inspectors or the reconstruction efforts on this bridge never addressed the what appears to be damaged columns, and now these columns are starting to feel the strain of road traffic traveling over them, and it's starting to show as large cracks are appearing. Now, some people may be saying, well, that doesn't mean that the bridge will collapse. And maybe it doesn't, but I would like to remind y'all of a bridge here in the United States that saw stress fracturing like this on a key part of the bridge, and then later on was shut down because of it. And that brings us to the DeSoto Bridge on I-40, and I'll make sure to try and get that here. Let's see, damage. And I'll show y'all this right here. So let me go over here. And here we have it. Here's a picture of the I-40 bridge. And over the course of multiple months, and we can actually see a picture of this right here. This is about the best example. You can see a crack right there forming in the steel beams that make up the Hernando DeSoto Bridge on Interstate 40 crossing over the Mississippi River. That was visible in 2019 during a visual inspection, I believe, by the Kentucky Department of Transportation. By the time 2021 had come around, that fracture had turned into a complete crack. And during the height of the day's traffic, that part of the bridge, the beam, would actually separate itself by an entire 12 inches or a foot. And considering that that is one of the most important parts of the load-bearing, I guess I should say, components of the Hernando DeSoto Bridge, it was very severe. And they say, the Department of Transportation's, both of them that were involved in this investigation after that beam pretty much shattered, they said that that bridge could have collapsed with just maybe a few more months of road traffic over it. And I think that this is one of the most modern and best applicable scenarios to what we're kind of seeing here on the Kerch Bridge. While the Kerch Bridge's supports are, of course, concrete with rebar, it still does show that the main concrete part of the structure that is not the steel rebar inside of it is coming apart. It is truly starting to crack all the way down the middle from the weight of the road traffic over it. And that may show that they will close down the Crimean road bridge again. They're going to have to close it down entirely and then begin to try and repair these columns. Otherwise, the bridge may collapse. Much like we would have seen if the crack on the I-40 bridge, the DeSoto bridge over I-40, would have continued to be unaddressed. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that a little bit, and believe it or not, this is big news, really, as far as Russian supply efforts are going into Crimea. But this isn't even the biggest our news got today, because many of y'all may have known, before y'all even got on this news tonight, that Russia is being invaded again. Almost in the same area. And of course, when I say that, it's not near Gryveron. Gryveron was the original place that the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK crossed about a few weeks ago. They actually started to cross near Shebekino, and this has been foreshadowed for many days on our news, as we've seen throughout about the past week. Continuous bombardments, shellings, and precise attacks being made against critical Russian infrastructure and critical Russian buildings in this area. But moving on, before we get there, we also saw that it appears that there was a joint attack that was made within the larger city of Kursk, a decent ways up and away from the area of Shebekino and Belgorod. And so starting off, here's our first clip of the explosion that was heard within the Kursk area. We see them looking into the distance, and we can hear the explosion right there. And we can also see the plume of the smoke cloud that was caused by that explosion. The sound having finally traveled to the cameraman.
And why was the cameraman already filming in that direction?
I think because they saw the flash of the explosion, so he pulled out his camera and started filming, and then the sound of the explosion finally reached him by the time he started filming. I think that's probably what happened there. But moving on into the next clip, we also saw the explosion from another angle as well. We can see the cameraman looking into the distance. And we can actually see the explosion over there. A little bit of a flash. And we can now hear the explosion reaching this cameraman. I believe this guy may have been filming because we can see he was actually filming before the explosion even occurred. He may have ended up filming because there may have been an air raid alert, or Russian air defenses were active over the city, and then he was filming to show that, and then he caught the explosion as well. We don't know what this explosion was directly targeting. From what we can tell, both videos are showing the exact same explosion, so unfortunately we really don't know what was being targeted within the city of Kursk, but we can confirm that something was hit and at least damaged, maybe even destroyed, by either partisan or Ukrainian activity within the Kursk city area. At the exact same time that was happening, the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps were, of course, both giving speeches before they began to cross the border. And some of y'all are probably wondering, why is it that that every single time we hear about a Russian border crossing, it's always the FOR and RDK forces? How come we've never seen an attack where it's just the RDK or just the FOR? Well, before these attacks started to begin in Shebekino, there was actually a very highly publicized agreement in between the RDK and the FOR that was put out pretty much everywhere, and some videos exist of this on YouTube, where they openly agreed that they would team up together to fight the Russians. And so whenever we see the FOR or the RDK, you can always guarantee that the other unit is in tow with them. So they're pretty much operating in unison, and we believe out of the two, the Freedom of Russia Legion is the one that is calling the shots, and the RDK is more so following them, because the Freedom of Russia Legion is the larger group of the two, and is most likely the one that is ending up coordinating their efforts. But with that, we're going to be moving on into our first clip that shows the Freedom of Russia Legion forces giving a speech before they cross the border again today, this time into the area of Shebekino. And so, here is the speech. We are the Legion of Freedom of Russia. Now, we are near the border of our motherland. Very soon, we will advance again to the territory of Russia, to bring freedom, peace, and tranquility. Gryveron, this is just the beginning. As a consequence of the cowardice of Putin's military jackals, we got a lot of trophies. Thanks to this, we'll be able to arm more of our associates. We are going to liberate all of Russia, from Belgorod to Vladivostok, for the white-blue-white freedom flag to be raised in Moscow. And so we can hear this guy giving a fairly good speech. It's actually a pretty good one, I gotta say. And then we also saw that that was a RDK as well, which seems to have largely mirrored the speech given by that Freedom of Russia Legion representative. And while we wait for that video to load, probably indicating that we're undergoing a flatline, which we are.
We had a slight bit of lag there for just a second.
Just a slight bit, a slight smidging of lag. But of course, we power through. And so they could kiss it. And, you know, and some people I've been seeing are saying, throw up the Russian Wojak, the Russian crying Wojak. I would, but we think it's not even the Russians anymore. It's probably another group. But y'all be, you know, if y'all don't already know, y'all might be finding about later. Anyways, here's the speech from the RDK. Well, friends, the Russian Volunteer Corps are fighting in Russia again. Very soon we will see the outskirts of Shebekino. Unfortunately, we cannot evacuate the civilians from the bordering regions because the Russian forces are shelling these regions, making evacuation more difficult. Remain in your homes and don't be afraid. The Russian Volunteer Corps does not fight citizens. And we hear some kind of an explosion or something at the very end of that speech, and then they cut the video. But with that, the speeches were given, and then the operation went forward, and we got our first confirmed video footage of the RDK forces having crossed the border and begun fighting somewhere in a forested area. Now, we do not go into the exact positions of Ukrainian or pro-Ukrainian forces at any given time, but considering that this is in a forested area, that really relegates these actions to being somewhere in the western direction of Shebekino, most likely towards the area of Novaya Tolvozhanka. But with that, here's the clip of the firefight. We can hear gunfire being fired to and fro, most likely from Russian forces and the RDK forces, and we can see what appears to be RDK forces prone on the side of the road and firing into the forest. We can also see another RDK soldier right up there, mostly hidden by the reeds. And we can see them laying down fire. This began to cause an immediate panic again within the Belgorod region, and specifically towards the town of Shebekino, where most of everyone, including the Freedom of Russia Legion, thought the attack was going, and it was going in that direction as far as we know. We immediately saw that Russian government officials began to take out sensitive documents from administrative buildings and began to burn them in impromptu open-air fires. It appears that they are most likely not trying to destroy, you know, of course, some people are thinking when they're burning documents of the Nazi Germans who were usually trying to destroy information about the death camps and similar kinds of war crimes and crimes against humanity that they've been committing. What they're most likely burning right here is sensitive Russian government information, most likely about conscription numbers and other similar things that the Belgorod region and the town of Shebekino may be dealing with, and it may also be that they are trying to burn ciphers that would be used by the Russian government to relay encrypted information from one government facility to another. That is most likely what we would assume them to be burning, and we can see them doing that here in this clip. From what we can tell, these are also a part of the civil administration, not the military administration. But with that, that's the end of that short little clip, and when you see that person passing by, and it appears that they were too busy to notice that they were being filmed, and they were trying to burn as many of the documents as possible. In the same time, those guys must have been pretty lucky, because it appears that the administrative building that they most likely just came from was hit not that much later, and it appears that the entire building had erupted into flames, at least on the higher floors. And we can see that right here. Now, that is...
I will say it might have been one of their nicer ones.
Yeah, that was one of their nicer buildings that I've ever seen in the war. And also, the fire is spread all the way from one end of the building to the other on the roof. Usually, fires do not burn their way down. You know, of course, heat travels upwards. So we probably will assume that the damage will be relegated to some of the very higher floors in the building and probably won't make their ways down to the bottom floors. We don't even know the fate of this building at this point because this was filmed 17 hours ago, and by this point, the fire has most likely burned its course. So we don't exactly know how badly damaged this administrative building was, but this thing has certainly taken some incredibly severe damage, and the roof is gone at least. But with that, we're going to be moving on into our next little bit of news. We're going to also see that people immediately started to flee Shebekino. We can see some footage right here. It appears that someone is being brought to an ambulance, and we can also see Russian telegrams where people are going mental, and they're saying that they're leaving the city. That's pretty much all of this summarized right here over all of these telegram posts. So it appears that things are not going well in the town of Shebekino, and we can also see, once again, that areas are being targeted within Shebekino, and we can see some explosions here on film, or more so picture. This one appears to be incredibly large. We don't know exactly what was hit right there. It may have been a oil refinery or an ammunition depot, considering that the smoke is a grayish color. It could be a mixture of the two, or it could be something that we don't really know about. But based off of its scale and size compared to the trees in the distance, this explosion and the resulting blast must have been incredibly large. But once again, we don't know exactly what was hit in that picture. Moving on into our next bit of news, we also saw a Russian journalist within the town of Shebekino. It appears that at the moment of this filming, which was 17 hours ago, the town may have still been under Russian control. And we can see a Russian journalist documenting a minor amount of damage that was caused to a building in the town. Of course,
a Russian journalist, you say?
A Russian journalist. That means that they are
Is
a
that even a thing?
I think maybe. It's a little bit of a stretch, though, but maybe. We can see them showing some of the damage, but it's very interesting to see that a lot of windows have been busted out, and it doesn't really seem to be a lot of visible damage in many places, you know, like you would see elsewhere in the war, like, for example, in Ukraine, but very interesting to see a little bit of damage being caused to the town of Shebekino. Of course, it's a war, so they won't be able to go without damaging something. Something will end up being damaged. Meanwhile, we also saw that the Freedom of Russia Legion, which is largely the muscle of these operations outside of the RDK, they were able to destroy a Ural 4320 along with its accompanied mortar, which is a 2C4 Tulip mortar in this clip. We can see the drone looking around, and we can see the Ural 4320 and its Tulip mortar going up in a ball of flames, with the mortar ammunition also exploding on the back of the truck. And so it does appear that the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK have once again crossed the border, completely surprising the Russian garrison in the area, and it appears that they are being overrun at the moment. At this exact time, we do not know exactly how far the FOR and RDK forces have made it into Russia, considering that Shebekino is only a few miles away from the border, and the lower density residential areas actually kind of start out here, although barely. This area has largely been abandoned, and you can see that that part of the city just doesn't really exist. And I think we should, yeah, we are back. Thank God, we are finally back. Had to make sure there. Sorry, everyone. That one was exceptionally rough. In fact, that required me to take a little bit of behind-the-scenes action to fix that problem. I gotta tell you. And so we'll be waiting for a second just to make sure that everyone is reconnected and we're all on the same page again. Once again, I do want to apologize because while the lags are out of our control, and it appears that they are getting worse and worse as time keeps on going, and it's most likely a specific group that is targeting and harassing this channel, we still feel pretty bad about this happening to y'all, because of course y'all are here to listen to the news, and we are trying to cover it as best as possible. So once again, I do ask that y'all please bear with us through these lag attacks, because we are trying our best to make sure to continue to cover the news, although we are experiencing heavy interruptions. And so, moving on back into what we were saying about Shebekino, because I don't know where we may have been cut off. We do not want to get into exact details about where the ROF and RDK forces, or FOR and RDK forces may have made it to at this point, because, of course, that is an operational security issue, and loose lips do sink ships. In case if any of y'all were wondering, whether that's a true thing or not, whether the Ukrainians really care about people filming their forces or filming sensitive information, 4 Ukrainian bloggers actually got arrested just 3 days ago in the city of Kyiv alone for filming sensitive military areas. For example, the Patriot air defense systems and exactly where they were. They ended up actually being arrested for that, and they were some fairly large bloggers within Ukraine. And it is very important to always remember that while this war has been going on for 463 days, and many people have been seeing all kinds of stuff coming from all over Ukraine in terms of video and picture evidence, there is information that is very sensitive to show in the public eye. The Russians do not really know a lot, believe it or not, about what's going on in Ukraine and where Ukrainian military forces are. And so whenever you hear or see any of these films and footage that shows something specific, like where Ukrainian forces are, where Ukrainian surface-to-air missile batteries are located, that is incredibly sensitive information that the Russians did not have access to, and now that they are being able to see that video, they have a fairly good idea where Ukrainian forces may be, and that is putting Ukrainian soldiers in direct jeopardy and in the risk of death. So With that, I always want to make sure that we all keep that in mind, and that's why we're not going to be going into extremely precise detail about what the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK may be doing inside of Russia at this point. All I can say is that it appears by video footage that their operation is going well. The Russian administration in the area is expecting for them to take Shebekino. That is why they're burning the documents, and it appears that everything is going according to plan, at least at the moment, for the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK forces. Beyond that, we are going to withhold comment until the next day, and then tell y'all what happened largely today in terms of the frontline movements tomorrow, so that way we can make sure that there's enough time in between that news and what they're actually doing, so that we're not putting anyone's lives at risk. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Shebekino news and the Belgorod news, which is great to see, and hopefully they'll be making a massive amount of progress in that area. And we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns, because interestingly enough, we only have 2 of them, and it's the lowest amount we've ever had, actually. So moving into our first clip, we saw some Ukrainian tanks in training. Here we can see what appears to be Slovenian-provided M55Ss, backed up by a large amount of armored cars and APCs. Of course, this is in a training field, and it appears that they're trying to get down the formation in which these vehicles would advance through an open field. Very interesting to see, and very good to know that they are continuing that kind of training. Speaking of training, training is something that is very important in the modern war, especially considering that the Russians emphasize no training whatsoever. And so any training that the Ukrainians are able to provide to their soldiers gives them a massive upper hand in the field-to-field fighting that we see happening right now on the Ukrainian front lines. And in the western area of Ukraine, we have seen the Ukrainians attempting to make not only training improvements and continue to keep a high level of training, but they're also trying to make frontline innovations as well that will really be helping out the Ukrainian soldier in the day-to-day fight. And so starting off, we saw some Ukrainian Marines in training, and it appears that they're doing what they call a team-building exercise, walking through muddy water holding a giant log. The best kind of team building.
Not the log. Not the log.
And we're going to have to mute that because they're playing Chad music, and we see these guys are hauling the logs.
Oh, they got a lot of people in that log, so that's probably easy.
I don't know. I don't know if it would be easy or not.
Maybe bogging down in that mud isn't helping anything.
No, I don't think that's helping at all. I think these guys are having a tough time, not gonna lie. You see that they're having to squat in that water for a good while, probably pretty cold as well. We now see them getting back up. Man, and look at that. They got their rifles wet and everything. Those things are going to be rusted over tomorrow. They're going to look like they've been, like, they're like 70 years old. And we see them hitting them on the head with sticks. Oh, no. Oh, it appears that they are running into jeopardy. Many people have given up on holding the log, and they are struggling.
Are these just normal soldiers or special forces or something?
I believe these are supposed to be Ukrainian Marines in training right here, so they would be considered of a higher grade and quality than your rank-and-file Ukrainian soldier, because the Ukrainian Marines, or naval infantry as they used to be called, are supposed to be trained to a higher standard. But with that, that's the end of that clip. Really interesting to see. And we also got another clip from the training fields of the M55s and the armored columns operating with the infantry on, I guess you could say, a large open field like they'll be finding on the front lines. And we saw that when a Ukrainian convoy stopped in the training, the M55s continued to press on, and we can see that here in this clip. Also, we're going to have to mute that. But you can see the M55 just driving right through the convoy and right onto the other side of the road to keep on going. Armor stopping in this kind of modern war is, of course, quite dangerous, and so it was important for the infantry column to continue moving, and it's certainly important for tanks like the M55, which are more vulnerable due to their weaker armor, to continue moving so that way they don't become the victim of Russian fire. But still, a really interesting video to see. But talking about ancient equipment, like the M55, that has been greatly modernized into a modern standard, we can see that the Ukrainians are taking that idea and moving it on into the next level. We don't know when this video was taken, but it's the first time we've ever seen anything like this in Ukraine. We saw that the Ukrainians were testing a remote-controlled machine gun turret. This was somewhere in the Lviv Oblast, and it was uploaded today, but we've never really seen anything like this before.
Oh, no way. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? You see a whole bunch of soldiers standing around and observing the tech. And when you see what appears to be the controller, which looks like a Steam Deck. And we now see the automated machine gun turret at work. Now that is incredibly cool. And to kind of explain why they would want an automated machine gun turret, some people are thinking, oh, it allows them to, I guess you could say, build up their forces along the lines or leave some areas of the line unmanned. That's not really the case. You see, this is operating under a similar principle that Astugna operates under. Because, once again, remember, Astugna is very similar to this. It is a ATGM launcher that is remote controlled from a group of crew members in the distance, in relative safety behind cover. This allows for Ukrainian machine gunner crews to not have to sit there and set up their machine gun and sit in the wide open being a visible target. This allows for a Ukrainian machine gunner crew to set this thing up, move maybe a couple of dozen yards away to where they're in cover, and then operate their machine gun from safety where the Russian infantry in the distance can't visibly see them. And these are the kinds of battlefield innovations that, once implemented across the wider scale of the Ukrainian army, allows them to take far greater losses than the Russians, because now this is removing the machine gun teams from danger completely, at least in the wide open fields. In urban fighting, we're probably not going to see these things used much unless if it's static defensive urban fighting. And offensive urban fighting, we probably won't see these things in action. Nonetheless, it does keep machine gunners out of harm's way and puts them into safety and makes sure that they can still lay down incredibly effective fire. It's so very nice to see a very neat innovation. We don't know when this thing came around, but it may be introduced into Ukrainian frontline service here in the near future. And so now it's time for us to move out of the training fields, now of the innovations that the Ukrainian army is continuously making to try and get itself into a better, I guess I could say, place than the Russian army. And we're now going to be moving back into our location unknowns and the Russian casualty report. Before we get to this, though, there are many questions that have been posed to y'all tonight. One of them is up right now, and I can see that it is getting a load of response. In 6 minutes, 1,000 of y'all have given y'all's input on that question. But before we get to that one, there are many great questions that have already been asked, and I want to hear what y'all have been thinking about some of the questions that Matthew has posed to all of y'all tonight. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so let's get started on our first poll, and it says, a U.S. general says that tanks for Ukraine are more important than F-16s, and what are your thoughts? 38% said yes, it's true, tanks are more important. 38% also said, they are equally important. 15% said, no, that's untrue, F-16s are more important, and 9% said unsure. And to me, I'll be totally honest, I think the F-16s are more important. I think that air superiority would help them in a much faster way and more effectively than tanks. Tanks are definitely necessary, but they are getting tanks from other countries, and the Abrams, which is what the U.S. general was referring to, aren't necessarily crucial. I think they'd be better suited with the F-16. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm actually going to have to take an opposite stance there. I'm going to have to say I think the Abrams is more important, at least in the short term, than an F-16. And also, I would have to ask Matthew, why do you, like, out of the two, I'm interested, because I think you and me have completely different thoughts here on the F-16 and the Abrams. Why do you think the F-16 is more important than the Abrams?
Well, specifically speaking, the U.S. general is referring to American support. So between the two things that America could provide, the Abrams or the F-16s, I think that air superiority would be much better. Ukraine can suffice with the tanks that they receive from Germany and other countries. They're, in my opinion, comparable to the Abrams. But from the U.S., they should focus on pressuring for those jets.
Interesting. That is a very interesting way to look at it, by the way. That makes a good amount of sense. But in my opinion, I would have to still say that the Abrams, in my opinion, is probably more important than the F-16. The reason why I think that is because while F-16s are great, we have seen that the Ukrainians have been able to do incredibly well without a large amount of air support, at least at the moment. And of course, air support's great, and I do think that they eventually need to get it. In fact, I think instead of the phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it too, you ought to be able to have the cake and eat it too. You ought to be able to do both at the same time. So they should get an Abrams and the F-16s almost at the same time. But in terms of importance to what the Ukrainians will be able to do, the aircraft are great and will certainly be helping them out going on further into the war. But as far as the Ukrainians conducting counteroffensives in the future and also being able to keep their infantry alive, which is where we see the highest amount of casualties, the Abrams will most likely be helping out a far greater deal than the F-16 would. On top of that, it does provide direct infantry support on the field in a highly armored package. From what we understand, the Abrams most likely would not be knocked out by modern Russian tanks or even modern Russian anti-tank systems, so it would probably be able to do fairly well given the frontline conditions. The F-16, of course, would do great, and it would also be allowing the Ukrainians to do things that they haven't been able to do before, like effective SEAD missions or similar, I guess you could say, operations like that. But at the same time, I think in real practical use, at the moment, the Abrams probably would end up being a more effective system than the F-16, at least for the troops on the field. So with that, I hope that does address that one fairly well, but very interesting and very interesting to see that a whole bunch of people had a lot of input on that one. And once again, while we discuss, because I want to make this clear, while we discuss and sometimes have opposite beliefs on stuff on the poll, there is not really a correct answer to that question, and that's also why we run polls. Really, every answer to that poll is a correct answer. It's really just a matter of opinion, what you think. So once again, I want to say this because sometimes people get very tribalistic about their opinions or inputs. Don't ever take it personally when anyone disagrees with you, especially folks in the live chat, because for some reason people get like mental over trivial stuff. Make sure not to take it personally. It is just a matter of opinion after all. And at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want in the Department of Defense. They're going to send what they want. And we're just talking and chit-chatting down here in the stream. So with that, hope that does address that one fairly well and also give that disclaimer out there. And with that, we are on to the next question.
All right. And our second poll says Zelensky says that he wants more Patriots if fighter jets can't be delivered soon. And is that a good request? 90% said it's better to get air defense now. 5% said unsure. 3% said I'm indifferent on this one. And 2% said no, it will distract from the jets. And I have to say that I'm personally with the 2%. I think it's going to distract from the jets. I think Zelensky might have made a mistake here in the way he framed the statement. He's basically given the U.S. a way out to stall on the jets a little bit more by saying that he would accept Patriots in exchange for holding off on the jets. That's basically what he said. To me, that seems like a bad idea to say that. The U.S. is probably going to now extend the delay on the jets because he said that and probably supply a few more Patriots instead. That's good that they're getting more Patriots, but they really need those jets. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I would largely think that that is taking away from the jets, because once again, what's always important to remember is that in the background, while the United States seems to be giving a never-ending amount of support, which is of course amazing, the war has to be won on a practical budget, and there's only so much stuff we can send before even the folks who are approving these aid packages start to say that they're getting too expensive. So as far as the F-16s and the Patriots go, it is really one or the other, and especially considering that a whole Patriot battery, which they must be sent over in a battery, you can't send them over piecemeal, costs $1 billion. You might be able to get more F-16s then you would be able to get Patriot missile defense systems. But once again, that's not adding in all of the additional costs of the F-16s, like the training for the ground crews that would be involved, the spare parts and equipment that would constantly have to be sent to Ukraine to keep these aircraft running, the kind of ordnance that they would use. And that's not really adding that into the cost. But I believe when we went back and looked at the F-16s, some of the lower priced F-16s were around $20 million a piece.
Yeah, and also I saw Mark point out that the Patriots are $1 billion a pop for the entire system. And for some reason, even though the Patriot costs a lot more than an F-16, the U.S. is a lot more willing to provide that than the jet. Doesn't make any sense to me, and I just don't understand it.
So, the Ukrainians want 50 F-16s to go over this and try and go over the math. Once again, we don't do math well, giving that disclaimer. But 50 F-16s of the lower end variety that are around $20 million. So you're talking about your older F-16Cs, perhaps, you know, some of the older ones that are maybe around 30 years old at this point, 40 years old. To get 50 of those to Ukraine, it would cost exactly $1 billion to get 50 F-16s to the Ukrainians. That does not include the munitions, the training, and everything else that would be involved that are kind of the hidden costs of running those aircraft. Just the aircraft alone, it is $1 billion to send 50 of them at around $20 million a piece. One Patriot missile defense system costs $1 billion. To try and put that into scale, how much 50 F-16s versus one Patriot missile defense system costs. So when you put it into that kind of equation, I would actually say that that is a folly on Zelensky's end to say if they can't send F-16s, send more Patriots, because he may be giving up, in terms of the budgeting, 50 F-16s for one additional Patriot battery. And of course, a Patriot battery isn't anything to scoff at. And in reality, it does about the same thing that an F-16 would be able to do, at least in the air superiority field, which is to make sure to smack down Russian aircraft, missiles, and drones whenever they show up on the radar, which is what an F-16 would do as well in that role. But at the same time, a Patriot cannot do air-to-ground support missions. It cannot do air support of any kind because it's not an aircraft, and on top of that, it has no ability to hit anything on the ground. It is solely a surface-to-air missile defense system. So I would say that is a little bit of a folly, because the aircraft, in the end, for the amount you would get, and also the, I guess you could say, malleability of what they can do, they are far more effective and far more needed than another Patriot missile defense system for the same price as all of those aircraft. So with that, I hope that does address that, in my opinion, fairly well, going through the numbers. But once again, it's really up to Zelensky and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense as to what they think is more important, and also up to the Department of Defense as to what we find logical to send and not to send. And so far, while I have to say they've been going a little slow, the support we have sent has not been bad at all. It's been fairly good support, very good modern equipment. But at the same time, I do feel like we could end up speeding up that process a little bit more, or at least streamlining it. But with that, hope that does address that one fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, Prigozhin says that Wagner's next assignment might be defending Russian territory, and what are your thoughts? 53% said he's likely right, Russia will need it, 9% said unsure, 15% said I doubt it, and 22% said he's lying and it's just more hype. And Prigozhin said this, and of course Prigozhin has a long history of exaggerating statements, but on this one, I think he might be right. Wagner has said they need a 1-month refresh period since they got slaughtered in Bakhmut. I'm assuming they need to recruit a lot more people and try to build their equipment back up. But I think they probably will be hired by Russia to defend the border since these incursions are starting to happen, and they'll probably be fighting their own people. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say then it's probably a reality that we're going to be looking at in the future, because while, we heard for a while that Prigozhin planned, or Nutsek sent, the Wagner group back down to Syria and Central Africa, the fact of the matter is that isn't going to be a great place to have his little group of mercenary men once a supposed civil war begins in Russia, or once power struggles begin, because they could be barred entry from Russia. If someone gets into power and goes, those Wagner guys, they could be coming back at any moment, they could just deny them entry back into Russia. So that's not really a good place for Wagner forces to be if Prigozhin is thinking that there's going to be some kind of a coup or some kind of a civil war or power struggle going on in Russia. So he would probably be apt, at least from his political posturing, to try and keep a large amount of Wagner forces within the Russian Federation and make sure that they do not leave. And so they may end up trying to take over border security here in the future, and also try and counter what the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK have been doing over the past several weeks and months at this point. Are they going to be successful at that? Probably not, because the Wagner group is quite a small force at this point. From what we assume, there's only about 5,000 to 7,000 of them, and you're going to be stretching 5,000 to 7,000 guys from the Wagner group on top of the very small amount of Russian forces that are already there that are spanning a several 100-mile long front line. If we were to pull out a measuring tape, which I think we can do right here, boop, 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 and we're going to try and get this as accurate as possible. It will be, of course, very crude, but we'll be trying. So let's say they have about 7,000 guys, and they have to cover about 470 miles, 450 miles of frontline area with 5,000 to 7,000 guys. We'll go with 6,000 because that's down the middle. So 450, well, actually 6,000 divided by 450, and that means that there's going to be about 13 Wagner guys for about every single mile of the front line. And you can see right there, that kind of frontline density is going to be so low, it may as well be pointless for the Wagner to be there. That's not even a company per mile. So say that they push through the Shebekino area, and and of course that they wouldn't be distributed evenly across the entirety of the Russian border. They most likely have garrisons within some of the larger towns like Grivoron and Shebekino, but there's going to be maybe like 1 or 2 Wagner companies there. And then they'll have to be taking other Wagner units that are spread along this 450-mile long border and then moving them into that area to stop that advance. And by then, that advance has already occurred. They've probably made a decent foothold into Russia again, and they're practically just getting there late, kind of like the Russian army did when the RDK and FOR moved on over into Grivoron, and then they are in the same situation that the Russian army was in. So I don't really think that will really be beneficial for the Russians, or it'll really change anything. But for Prigozhin, it is great posturing, so that way he'll be there, and the Wagner unit will be in Russia if anything starts to happen and starts to go down. They don't have to return from Syria or Central Africa at that point. They are going to be right in the middle of the action. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're fresh out of polls, so we're moving into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous donation from guess who? Mark, General of the LSA. And he puts in a 105 donation, and thank you very much, Mark, for that support. As always, he says, do you think a HIMARS battery with 12 times the 150,000 tungsten pellets would be a good breakthrough tech for Russian trenches? Would sure clear out, plus another couple of batteries of 12 tubes HIMARS for detonating mines in Dragon's Teethlets.
And I thank you so much for the huge amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you are LGs around here. Well, not LGs, OGs around here. And I gotta thank you so much. I mixed up LSA and OG together, and I got LG, like LG TVs. But still,
they're appliances now.
Man, they're appliances now. They're washing machines. But still, thank you for the support, Mark. And to answer that, I think that HIMARS with the tungsten pellets, I'm gonna have to be honest with y'all. I've forgotten the 2 different kinds of HIMARS missiles that are used as like an M39 and an M40, but I forgot which is which. There's a unitary warhead, and then there's the tungsten ball bearings warhead. So we're just going to call them that from here forward, the both of them. I believe that tungsten ball-bearing warheads are amazing in the anti-infantry role, and we've even seen that they are able to get enough penetrating power or enough velocity behind these tungsten ball bearings that they are able to punch through even thinner armor, like the armor of an MTLB or a BMP. So those kinds of tungsten ball-bearing warheads are perfect for clearing out Russian infantry and light Russian vehicles. And so I think that they would serve an amazing purpose at making sure to clear out trenches and other similar, I guess you could say, obstacles in the way of a Ukrainian advance. However, I would say that we don't really know how effective those tungsten-bearing warheads are in clearing out mines in Dragon Teethlets as well, because Dragon Teethlets are pure concrete and rebar, and that might be pretty tough. It's pretty tough, really, even for conventional artillery to take out Dragon's Teeth. Those are something that usually have to be bulldozed over, and they just put a large amount of dirt over them, and then they drive over that, or moved out of the way, and then tanks and armor continue to flow on right through the gap. Usually, it's very difficult to destroy Dragon's Teeth that way. Mines, on the other hand, I don't really know. And so, let me introduce y'all to Microsoft Paint. Now, this is going to be greatly enjoyed by many people. I know it will. And so, here's Paint. And so, let's draw up the field. And you have a couple of mines below the surface throughout this field. So, if the tungsten ball-bearing warhead explodes, kind of in an airburst form, about right here, we could assume that the shrapnel is, of course, going to be going a decent amount of it straight down and right out to the sides, most likely. Which is great in this small area, but beyond that, the rest of the tungsten ball bearings are going to be traveling on out pretty much across the horizon, and if they do hit the ground, they're going to hit the ground, they're going to kind of ricochet off and fly away. So while the tungsten ball bearing kind of warheads would be great for blowing up mines under the ground and maybe even on surface level in a small area, that may not prove to be effective over as wide a radius as many people would think. I'm not exactly sure if this is exactly how it works, but in my mind, I'm thinking that this may be the kind of shortcoming that even these tungsten ball bearing warheads may run into. So if we grab this eraser here, and we're just going to actually draw over this because y'all know that this is the older illustration, a mine charge, like the ones we would normally see in Ukraine at this point, they get fired across this field laterally. We'll draw this out in green. They get laid out.
And also, just real quick, Mark did say he said no, a mix of the tungsten and HE.
Oh, they probably would be able to do pretty good, but I still think that in comparison to the anti-mine charges, like the ones that a UR-77 Meteorite uses, or other kinds of, I guess you could say, anti-mine systems, it may not prove to be as economical to use, because I believe, and let's see, how much does an anti-mine charge cost? Let's see here. Let's see, the mine clearing charge is a rocket propelled. So this looks like it may be our answer. So let's see here. How much is this in millions? So let's see here, procurement. Let's see, BSA 43 mines. Mine clearing charges, all types. So P1, we want to find the P1 line. So it appears that the system, over the cost of its entire service life from around 2013 to now, has cost about 139 million US dollars to equip pretty much the entire US Army, most likely, well, really just the Army, it appears here. This is only the Army's cost. $139 million for them to pretty much equip the entire Army with anti-mine charges, or mine clearing charges, and that is pretty cost effective. Now, if we compare that to the cost of a HIMARS missile, and a individual HIMARS missile costs around $100,000, firing off 6 of them. You know, and this is just a rough approximate, you know, going over the cost of the tungsten ball bearings and unitary warhead. We're guessing 100,000 each, regardless of the kind. It is 600,000 US dollars to fire off an entire an entire launcher of those missiles, which will end up getting pretty expensive, especially compared to what we would assume is a mass number of mine laying charges. And let's see if we can get an exact number of how many they bought. So let's see. See the mine clearing, the mine ignition system, line charge, and then the cutters. So the unit cost for one of these line charges is only, it appears to be $11,934. So that's actually very cost effective, considering the kind of damage it can do to mines on the ground, as compared to multiple HIMARS missiles being fired, which can cost $100,000 apiece. Instead of spending about $600,000 to clear a limited number of mines, you can spend about $12,000, or even what appears to be maybe $503,000 for the entire system, to be able to wipe out that minefield a lot more effectively, and also clear out a perfectly straight line and know that there's probably no mines left whatsoever. So I would say it would be great for clearing out infantry, but I don't know, cost-effective wise, if it would be good for the Ukrainians going forward to spend such a large amount on HIMARS missiles to clear out the same field that the mine clearing charges that we've also provided them could do at a much more affordable cost, at least based off of what we're seeing right now. And I've got to be honest, I don't really know if I am reading off this list correctly. So, you know, just keep that in mind as well. But it does appear that it would be cheaper to use the mine clearing charges than it would be to use the HIMARS to do a similar job. But thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Mark. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, Mark, General of the LSA, are old guards of this channel and have been helping us to keep this thing running for an incredibly long time. If it wasn't for folks like you, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep this channel rolling. And I got to thank you so much, of course, for helping this channel to keep on rolling, and also blowing away fundraisers, because you are the fundraiser king, I think, at this point. Probably fundraised more than anyone else on this channel has. And hopefully, with your help, we'll be able to reach the $1 million goal this Sunday. Who knows? But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second super chat goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $30 super chat, and thank you very much, Margaret, for that support. She says, for the Books for Uni Fund, it's will probably buy one page for each of you, and take a live chat question, please. And real quick, before the enforcer answers that question, I will say, Margaret, that law school starts in August, and I actually went ahead and bought the first book for law school. It cost me a grand total of $30. The exact amount that you put in right there. So thank you very much for the support.
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley, in helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, as we always say, do make it possible. If it wasn't for folks like you, where would we be right now? We would be adless. We would be sponsorless. we would be without the Leaf Spring Army. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also thank you for putting that towards the book fund, because books are expensive. Matthew got lucky with that one, but I remember having to get a book in college at UAB that cost like $150. And then I never used the book, which really kind of like soured me on that, because I was like, why pay $150 for a book you never even made us use in this class? I was like, that was a waste of time. But still, you have to get the books. They are required, and that aggravates me, because usually it is the professors themselves that write the book and then publish it and then make it required reading in the class, and then the price of it is so freaking high. But still, you know, I guess that's one way that they support themselves, although the average UAB professor makes like $80,000 a year, so I don't really think they need to be like gouging the students on their own books to be able to survive, at least at that university. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Margaret. I hope you enjoyed my little aside about the cost of university books, and thank you so much for helping us out with that, because that is $30 put towards university books. And some people may be wondering, hey, she put in a 50. YouTube takes 30% of that. So we end up getting like 30, and YouTube goes, thank you. But with that, thank you once again for support, Margaret. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting to the Russian casualty report.
All right, and our last super chat, the third one of the segment, goes to Gary Robbins, who puts in a $25 super chat. And thank you very much, Gary, for the support. And it's good to see you once again. Hey! And he says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, welcome back. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running too. And of course, we all know this is coming. It's been coming the whole time. Slava Ukraini. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And it's now time for us to move on back into our news. And right back into the Russian casualty report, because they had a pretty fun day today. So, Matthew, brace yourself. You might want to sit down. That's a good number.
Oh!
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 Oh, we got four in one day.
Four of them. Oh my God.
I think the Ukrainians are kind of spoiling us a little bit, because they're typically getting like 7 and 8 these days. So 4 is impressive, but 7, we gotta have 7 again.
Man, I'm telling you, they are flooding in. Bobcats everywhere. And not only that, the losses in every other category were not that bad today either. We saw that 460 Russian soldiers were wiped out over the past 24 hours. Gotta be honest, that's not that bad. You know, I mean, not bad, not bad. Now you. And so great to see that another 460 of them have been taken out, and that does not include the wounded. The wounded are not included in that number. Those are the ones that took a nap and are now pushing up sunflowers. In the next one, we also saw that 6 armored personnel carriers were wiped out today as well. And this is about half of the war's average on any given day. It's around like 12 APCs per day. So it is not the highest number we've seen, but it is still pretty good. We also saw that 9 supply trucks were taken out. That is almost right on the average, and it's great to see that another 9 have been destroyed. So, of course, love to see it. And also we saw that 2 main battle tanks ended up being wiped out as well. Of course, the average is around 5, so this is a little bit below average, but once again, not that bad to see. And also, I'll be explaining why it's not that bad to see here in a second. We also saw that 14 artillery pieces were once again destroyed by Ukrainian counter battery fire, and we can see that their counter battery fire has picked up and never dropped off. It appears that they are able to destroy a large amount of Russian artillery on any given day, of course giving them an advantage on the battlefield, as the Russians will no longer be able to levy the firepower against Ukrainian infantry on the field. We also saw that 7 drones were shot down, and that is everything in every category today. And of course, this is for special equipment vehicles. Now, these numbers in the infantry casualty report are kind of low, and the vehicular losses in a decent amount of categories are almost on average or below average by a good bit. The reason why is because the Russians are starting to disengage on the front lines from activity, and over the past, I guess you could say, nearly 3 months, really all of the activity that has been undertaken by forces in the field have been Russian offensive actions, not Ukrainian offensive actions. That the only exception to that was in the area of Bakhmut, where about a month ago the Ukrainians began a small counteroffensive and managed to push the Russians back on both flanks, and we haven't seen any advances from the Ukrainians since then. And it appears that now that the war is continuing on and they have been able to take the city of Bakhmut, once again, Russian casualties are beginning to drop as they are no longer conducting suicidal offensives into Ukrainian defensive positions and getting wiped out in droves. So that may be why we're seeing that the casualty numbers in vehicular numbers and infantry numbers are beginning to enter their averages or even going well below the averages. And we can also see that today in the frontline news we got as well, because many of y'all may notice there's not a lot. There's actually a pretty small amount. This actually may be the smallest news segment of the night tonight, because there was only about 8 or 9 video clips that we could say kind of came from the frontline area in Ukraine today, and it is showing that the Russians are starting to hold back their forces from conducting offensives, and now they're laying in wait and waiting to see what the Ukrainians are about to do next. And it appears that the Ukrainian psyops, pun intended, if it is just a psyops, may be very successful, because they're not doing anything. It looks like they are now waiting in anticipation for what the Ukrainians will do, and they're getting ready to bore the brunt of whatever Ukrainian offensive will be able to bring onto them. However, in the area of Kupiansk today, we did see some Ukrainian troops on the move in this area, and we also did note that they were driving over what appeared to be some pretty dry ground as we saw dust coming up from the road. This is not the same in other parts of the front line. Some areas of the front line are completely bogged down. And we can also see this guy holding an AK-74 SU, which is the carbine version. Really neat. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but we could see some Ukrainian forces moving up to the front lines. Meanwhile, in the area around Chernopapivka, we did see that some Russians got blasted in this area today by the 1st Special Purpose Brigade and also the 97th Battalion of the Territorial Defense Force. Oh.
I thought it was going to a bop.
I thought it was about to be a straight bop, too. And we can see Russian forces flooding out of this building right here. It appears an entire platoon is inside of it. And we now see them moving around on the street. Actually, they count 40 orcs. Well, you see one of them down there moving through the field, just the one of them. And now the show begins. And we can see the artillery landing right on top of these 40 orcs. And it appears that they're about to turn them into no orcs. The artillery is hitting pretty accurately down this strip of buildings. We can see one hitting directly onto the building right there, and a second one as well. This one appears to have caught the building on fire. And we now hear music playing as they put up another silent movie card. I like how it burns, how people are in a hurry. Fire comes out, people are in shock, their eyes are popping out.
Damn.
Dang. All right.
All right.
A little hardcore, okay.
Tell it how it is.
More music plays. Another silent movie picture card. Well, I'm kidding. I like to watch them running in a hurry. More music plays. More Russians run. Chaos ensues. And that's the end of the clip. Oh, it's not the end of the clip. We see more artillery landing in the nearby area, and of course making sure to take out more Russians. We can now see them showing the burning building in the distance. And it is, of course, a nice sight to see. And shows us, once again, that the Ukrainian army in the area is doing a good job. However, that is really the only kind of frontline action we saw in the Northeast today. But I'm about to show y'all a treat. We rarely ever get to see footage from the Russian side. And we rarely ever get to see footage from soldiers that have been hit. And we rarely ever get to see footage of an anti-aircraft system being hit. Now, I have to give you all a little bit of an explanation as to what this thing is. The Pantsir S-1 is one of Russia's most modern anti-aircraft systems, and is what would be called, at least before the war, one of Russia's modern war-winning machines. This thing emphasizes the most modern technology. Anti-aircraft missiles? You got it. Anti-aircraft guns? 30mm in caliber? Oh yeah, buddy, you got it. Crew in the back of a trunk in a nice little cab? You betcha, buddy. Really nice air-conditioned cab on the front? Oh, hell yeah. This thing is a war winner right here, according to the Russians. And, of course, their best frontline surface-to-air missile defense system, or anti-air system, they have. Nothing tops it, at least according to the Russians. But in a second, we're about to see something really interesting. The crew members of this Pantsir S-1 were actually filming when they got hit by a kamikaze drone. They actually fired at it as well, and did not manage to shoot it down, either with surface-to-air missiles or with the guns that are mounted onto the turret of this Pantsir. Everything failed, and the rear of the vehicle did end up being hit. It's one of the first instances we have ever seen of Russian anti-aircraft crews recording themselves being hit, and one of the first times we've seen video footage coming from a Pantsir crew as well. The entire situation is incredibly rare, and we have two perspectives of it. Also, I would like for y'all to note real quick, there is a YouTube video out there. Let me actually go pull this up, because I saw this, Matthew, and I got a pretty good laugh out of it, and I haven't said anything about it until now, but I have to show y'all this as a little bit of a side note. A lot of y'all know United 24. They are the real fundraiser out there that supports the Ukrainian government directly. A lot of people have supported them. And one thing that's really interesting to me, you see, is this thumbnail right here that says, "Why does Russia fear the F-16?" And it makes me laugh. This thumbnail makes me bust out laughing because that is a picture of the F-16A that's in War Thunder in the background. Like, it actually is.
They needed that transparent image to put in the thumbnail.
Yeah, one second. F-16A War Thunder. I'll show y'all right here. It was one of the pictures that they put out during one of the patch notes. I'll show y'all. Wait, hang on. I gotta find it. All right, here it is. I think that's almost like the exact same one. And let me go back to this thumbnail. Yeah, it is. It's the exact same one right there. But that's actually the Japanese version. That's the F-16AJ. But this is the American one that they put in game. And when I saw it, I knew. I was like, that is a War Thunder picture right there from a patch. But let me see. Let me try and find y'all the actual picture they took. Because it makes me bust out laughing that every single time we pull up a picture, I'm always laughing at how many F-16 pictures from War Thunder there are, or really pictures from War Thunder at all. And now we're seeing...
A real testament to War Thunder's graphics quality.
Yeah, man, and also it's a real testament that it blended into the background of United 24's thumbnails, because United 24 always has darker backgrounds in their thumbnails, and they saw that and they went, "Ooh, that's nice." So they just took it. And every time I see that thumbnail, because I've been seeing it a lot lately, I'm always thinking, man, they really just did take a War Thunder picture and they put it into the background of the thumbnail, which is pretty funny to me. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little side note, speaking about United 24 and the whole War Thunder thing, and we're now going to be moving on to our first clip of the Pantsir being hit by an FPV drone. This, believe it or not, is actually from the gunner's position, the guy who was responsible for shooting down this drone. He's inside the Pantsir in this video, and you'll hear it being hit, and you'll also see him trying to, in vain, shoot down the drone. Here's the clip. We can hear the Pantsir on the move, we can see the camera shaking around, and we can now hear the 30mm guns on top of the Pantsir firing, but it appears that it was to no avail, as we can now hear the Pantsir being hit in the back. That thump was the thing being hit right here. And you can see that their camera goes out right there, Matthew. It goes to like the window XP thing.
Yeah.
But that was the rear view inside of the Pantsir of them getting hit. Now we're going to go to the driver's view as he's driving the Pantsir, trying to make sure that the FPV drone can't hit them, when he shows the FPV drone hitting the Pantsir. Exact same Pantsir, exact same crew. Here's the clip. We see the Pantsir slowly rolling down the road. And we see the turret lining up a surface-to-air missile. And we can now see them firing it.
Dang. That was loud as hell.
And it was. My eardrums are bleeding. And they're now beginning to roll down the road, trying to pick up speed to make sure that the FPV drone doesn't hit them as a sitting target.
Блять, ну деревья. Нет, куда вы смотрите сейчас? Идеально, дорога ровная. Да.
Trying to roll quickly, and he is communicating with the crew in the back.
Да.
We now hear them firing off the 30mm gun that we heard earlier, which lets us know that the drone impact is coming soon. Right there. And so with that, that's the other video footage. This one was actually from outside of the Pantsir's cab, where we saw the FPV drone slam right into the side, most likely knocking out the Pantsir, or at least requiring it to undergo major repairs. Either way, I'm pretty happy with what happened. It is nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to take out one of Russia's quote-unquote best frontline anti-aircraft systems with nothing more than probably like a $300 FPV drone. Love to see it, and I bet the Russians also love to see it. They're probably hating to see it, really, and they're crying about it, but who really cares what the Russians think? We're now going to be moving on into Bakhmut. And over the past 24 hours, we haven't really seen much change on the battlefield of Bakhmut. In fact, we've seen so little change that Deep State UA didn't even update the map today, at least as far as the stream goes. And the only video footage we got today from Bakhmut was of a Ukrainian BMP-2 firing somewhere near the built-up urban area, which means that it's in the city. So here's the clip. There's the BMP out there, and we can see it firing off some 30mm shells into the distance. You see it continuing to fire. And the Ukrainian cameraman continues to film. The BMP continues to fire, firing off some very controlled and slow bursts of the 30mm gun, and then the video ends right there. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but very interesting to see, and I'd love to know that the Ukrainians are continuing to fight near to the city area, and it shows that they may actually still have a small grip on the city of Bakhmut, at least the very outskirts of the city. But of course, we don't really know for sure, and there's not really a lot of information coming out about Ukrainian forces and what they may be doing in the outskirts of the town. However, as we move further down the front lines and into the Orlivka direction, we did see a small Ukrainian mortar firing in the east. Whoa. And we now see them firing the mortar. They're using a 60mm mortar to fire 40mm shells. While I screw up the wordage on that.
They're firing Morty.
Morty, we gotta fire the mortar. Oh, gee, Rick, I don't know. Matthew loves that one. But when you see him reloading another 40mm shell into the tube, now you can see
this guy's rocking that beard too.
Man, this guy is rocking the fit, man. And I love the 1960s leather belt he's got. Truly rocking the fit. He's even got that old blue and white striped shirt that they used to use in the Soviet Army. I mean, this man is fit in the drip. You know what I mean? And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Orlivka area, where we saw them coming up with a very interesting fix to a small problem that they've been having. And we're now going to be moving on down into the Marinka area, where we also saw that some Russian armored personnel carriers were destroyed. Oh, nice music. We can see the Ukrainian airborne are the ones conducting this little operation. We can see them dropping the F1 grenade into the driver's hatch and immediately causing an explosion, sending something flying, and we can now see the MTLB burning. We can now see them also hitting the Russian infantry that's nearby. Ooh, looks like those guys will not be going to the chiropractor anytime soon. We can see another drone hovering right on top of them and dropping a bomblet as well. That one appears to have been rather successful.
Oh dear.
Oh, dear. And so that's the end of the clip, and very nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to destroy an MTLB and also get a couple of Russian infantrymen while they were at it. Meanwhile, on the southern front, of course, activity has been slow. The southern front is usually just a kind of a slow and calm area of the front lines, at least for now. A very quiet area, very nice area. And near Chivone today, we saw that some Russian positions were hit by Ukrainian artillery. We can see here Russians wandering around and also using a couple of excavators, which may be the special equipment that we see reported on the casualty reports every once in a while. We can now see Ukrainian artillery coming down on the area and making sure to hit these Russians.
What is this place again?
I don't really know what they're doing, but it is some kind of a Russian position.
It's like a dirt bike park or something.
Hey, Vadim, you know what the front line could use? What? A dirt bike rally. Oh, bled. And we did, this is in the clip, but we saw a Russian dirt bike rally turn into a dirt bike wake or something like that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip on the southern front. Of course, nice to see. And we're now going to be moving on towards Mala Tokmachka, where we saw Russian forces also being hit here as well. Oh, let me mute that. Oh! You can see the shockwave. Oh,
Oh.
man, that's rough. Man, oh man, I'm telling you, that's a rough one right there. Pure white smoke, it's an ammo depot. It's as pure and white as smoke. It's as white as the smoke that comes out of a crack pipe. Had to throw that one out there, Matthew. It's an indirect reference, if you know what I mean. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that little clip. Very nice to see they were able to blow up an ammo depot, and also, Matthew, you know, I'm very compelled to make this joke. I will hold off on it. You know what? I'll send this one over in a text message to you, Matthew.
Oh, sending it to the review?
Oh, I'm sending this one to review, Matthew. I'm going to ask you, is this a joke I should say?
Let's see what it is. And
1 second.
ding, 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 ding.
Man, that is not the Jeopardy song. All right, so
Oh no! Don't make that joke.
Oh, yeah,
No.
I think we'll hold off on that one, but you gotta admit, it's a little spicy. That thing's got a little bit of juice in it.
That's less spicy.
That's less spicy. I'll tell you that. That's what that joke was kind of going for, but we'll refrain. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the southern front. Of course, not really a lot of activity going on in that direction. And we're now going to be moving on down into the area of Novokakhovka, where we also saw the destruction of surveillance equipment of the Russian armed forces in this area. We can see the drone flying in to the water tower where the surveillance equipment has been mounted, and we can see it hitting right there, taking it out. And also, we can see that they got no more signal. Kind of sad, but, you know, it is what it is, I suppose. You know, nothing that bad. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in the Novokakhovka area, and we're now going to be moving across the river and into the area of Inhalets, where we saw that a Ukrainian farmer almost got blown up by mines that were still inside of his fields. We can see the tractor almost rolled over several of them. And it appears that the front tire may have actually hit one of the mines, and it appears to have destroyed the steering gears up there, or more so the steering axle. I said steering gears like this thing is the freaking Titanic or something to talk about the steering gear. But we see him showing the mines. And also the damage to the front of the tractor, which was quite extensive. But luckily, he survived. And so with that, that is the end of that clip right there. And we can see that even for Ukrainian farmers now, it is still a pretty dangerous job to go out into their fields because there could be munitions just lying around ready to explode at any moment. We're now going to be moving on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 463rd day of the war. And so, without further...
is he in his house?
I don't know, but without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Дорогі українці, завершується цей довгий і важкий день. Перш за все, мої співчуття рідним і близьким тих, чиї життя забрала Росія. Забрали російські удари. Ми робимо максимум, щоб захистити людей. Не було такої міжнародної зустрічі, не було таких міжнародних переговорів, на яких не піднімалося б питання ППО для України. Але захист людей – це захист на всіх рівнях. Укриття мають бути доступними. Ніколи більше не має повторитись ситуація, як цієї ночі у Києві, коли люди прийшли в укриття, а укриття зачинене. Це обов'язок представників місцевої влади, дуже конкретний обов'язок – забезпечити наявність і доступність укриттів цілодобово. Боляче бачите недбале ставлення до цього обов'язку, боляче бачите втрати. І якщо обов'язок на місцях не виконується, це прямий обов'язок правоохоронців притягати до відповідальності. Сьогодні в нашій державі, як і в багатьох інших країнах, відзначається День захисту дітей. Але і в цей день держава-терорист забрала життя української дитини. Але і в цей день Росія обстрілювала наші міста від Харкова до Херсона, від Києва до Донбасу. Але і цей день ми використали по максимуму, щоб наблизити поразку терористів. І цей день став часом, коли ми наближаємо відповідальність Росії, кожного вбивці, кожного терориста. Сьогодні від ранку наша українська делегація в Молдові на саміті Європейської політичної спільноти. Зараз тут центр політичних дискусій на нашому континенті. Були дуже важливі переговори. Президентка Молдови та президент Франції, прем'єр Великої Британії та президентка Єврокомісії, президент Румунії та прем'єр Португалії, прем'єр Албанії та прем'єр Північної Македонії, прем'єр Італії, прем'єр Іспанії, президент Швейцарії, прем'єр Чехії, президент Азербайджану, канцлер Німеччини. Був і розширений формат з представниками Нідерландів, Данії, Швеції, Британії, Польщі, Бельгії. І, звичайно, зустріч на полях саміту та спільне засідання усіх учасників і учасниць саміту. Готуємо нові оборонні рішення для України. Це стосується і ППО, і авіації, нашого просування на землі. Готуємо реальний політичний зміст для саміту НАТО у Вільнюсі. Готуємо пакет гарантій безпеки для нашої держави на шляху в Альянс. Робимо все, щоб наблизити політичне рішення Євросоюзу щодо членства для України. Готуємо саміт миру на основі української формули миру. Я дякую всім лідерам, усім країнам, які нас підтримують за цими пунктами. Це не лише підтримка України, це підтримка реальної безпеки для всієї Європи. Окремо я хочу подякувати пані Урсулі фон дер Ляєн, президентці Єврокомісії, за підтримку наших ініціатив щодо захисту наших дітей, щодо пошуку і повернення тих маленьких українців і українок, які були депортовані в Росію. Маємо їх усіх повернути, маємо зробити все можливе і неможливе, щоб дати захист усім нашим людям по максимуму від будь-яких російських загроз. Впевнений, що це можливо. Окремо хочу подякувати президенту Мішелю, президенту Європейської ради, який сьогодні провів спеціальну безпекову сесію в рамках саміту. Окремо я хочу подякувати Роберті Мецолі, голові Європейського парламенту, за ухвалене рішення щодо боєприпасів для України, за підтримку виділення додаткових 500 мільйонів євро для цього. Дякую. Дякую усім нашим воїнам. Дякую усім, хто тренує наших воїнів, хто допомагає нам зброєю, хто лікує наших героїв після поранень. Дякую усім рятувальникам, усім нашим працівникам ДСНС та інших служб, які ліквідовують наслідки російських ударів. Дякую усім волонтерам, які допомагають нашим воїнам, нашим людям, нашій державі. Дякую усім, з ким ми йдемо пліч-опліч до нашої перемоги, до нашого миру і до покарання російських терористів. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr
Героям
Zelensky.
слава!
And Slava Ukraini! And also, interestingly enough, that is the beginning. Some very interesting answers that y'all have given to some questions. Y'all have thrown in some amazing inputs to some of the questions tonight, and I'm actually really interested to hear what y'all have been thinking about some of the top leading questions of the night that has been posed to the entirety of the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army has answered. And so with that, what did they say to some of the leading questions that have been asked tonight, Matthew?
All right, so hopping in back into our polls and also our final question segment of the night. The very first one says, Russia claims the West is actively pushing Moldova to participate in the Ukraine war, and what do you think? 69%. Nice. Said it's Russian propaganda. 13% said unsure. 11% said the West is pushing Moldova, and 7% said, they are somewhat, but not really. And to me, I really haven't seen much evidence that the West is trying to push Moldova to do anything except basically defend its own territory. So I would probably be with the 7%, probably somewhat, but not really. I'm sure there are some efforts to push them to help Ukraine, but nothing like the Russians are trying to portray it as. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think anyone's trying to get Moldova involved in the war right now. They're all just like, you know, you just do your own thing, you know, sit down there, sip a like an apple juice or something. Just don't get involved with anyone, just hang out. I haven't heard of anyone trying to push the Moldovans to get involved. So I'd have to be honest, I'm not seeing it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. But very interesting to hear that 69%. Nice. All agreed on one specific idea there. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says, the U.S. says Ukraine can expect a very robust package of support at the Vilnius summit in July. And what are your thoughts? 80% said a big package is coming soon, 9% said unsure, 7% said it's probably just hype, and 4% said nothing big is going to happen. And I'm going to go with the 80% on this one. I think a big package is probably coming soon. I'm not sure why they want to wait until July to give them that equipment. It seems like more of that stalling tactic. But eventually, the U.S. and the West does follow through and give them some equipment they can use. And I'm glad they're sending it, but I think it could be done with a little less drama behind it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Now, I would say, man, that's some very interesting points right there about the kind of aid and equipment that the United States is sending. But you know what a robust is?
Very extensive.
Well, it's what happens when a robot does something in Dubai. They get a robust. But moving on from that, and answering the actual poll, I would say that the support package that is most likely coming up in the next Ramstein conference will probably be pretty robust. We are assuming that eventually there will be F-16s within that package, but of course, even with them being in a package, it'll probably be months until they ever see them, because they, of course, have to go through the training. They also have to get them and send them over, and we all know that the United States government, at least in terms of sending arms to Ukraine, does move at a snail's pace. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because while it may be robust, it's always so slow that the robust kind of equipment that they should be getting ends up kind of taking a while to get there. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that one fairly well. Very interesting input from all y'all as well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Also, Alexander Neff blamed you for that joke. That was me. That was me. What the hell?
No, you're saying that's what he was mocking me what I said.
Oh.
I said, what the hell?
Oh, I thought you were saying that to the actual joke. I was like, no, don't blame it on him. That was my stupid idea. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says, Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to join NATO now, but Germany says not while at war. And what are your thoughts? 66% said he should know that is impossible, 7% said unsure, 11% said it's a possibility but unwise, and 16% said Zelensky is right and Germany is wrong. And of course, we examined it a while ago that Ukraine technically can join NATO while it's at war. However, it would almost instantly trigger Article 4 and 5, which would mean world war, essentially. I think Zelensky knows that's impossible. I'm really not sure why he keeps calling for it. There's nothing wrong with demanding to enter NATO after the war is over, but to keep calling for it while they're at war seems a little bit silly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that assessment. And I'd have to agree with a large majority of y'all that have put in input on this question tonight. I would have to say that I don't believe it's a smart idea for the Ukrainians to join during the war. And while Article 4 and Article 5 make it clear that you do not have to go to war if both articles are invoked, it is also not a good precedent to lay out that we have a new NATO member join. They are at war and they ask for that for help and support from the rest of NATO, and the rest of the NATO does not respond in any way, shape, or form rather than what we're already doing. That will make the NATO alliance look weak, and I don't think that is a smart thing to do because whether people say we kind of look weak now just supporting them, it makes us look really weak when they are an official NATO member and then we don't respond with military arms. So I would have to be honest. I would have to agree with most of y'all. They obviously should wait until the war is over to then be going to then join NATO. Nobody is protesting them joining NATO. People are just protesting them joining it during the war because that makes really no sense from any perspective whatsoever. Because they invoke Article 4, it moves on into Article 5, and Article 5 is invoked as well, and then what do? We have to come up with a response. And obviously, we're not going to want an armed military response, because obviously, while we will fold the Russians on the battlefield, nuclear Armageddon may still happen. And so we're trying to make sure to avoid that. That's why we've been supporting Ukraine indirectly by just giving them military equipment throughout the war. So it'd be completely counterproductive to have made it 463 days in that kind of situation and then immediately reverse our footing and then go, you know what, we're going to get directly involved in the war and just bring them on into NATO. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are fresh out of polls yet again, so we're moving back into our Super Chat questions, and the very first one goes to, guess who again? Mark, General of the LSA, starts out the Super Chat segment once more with a $50 donation, and thank you, Mark, once again for the second Super Chat of the night. He says, I'm running out of donation space. How many brigades have you heard have been equipped and are ready for the counteroffensive? And he says, kill, kill, kill.
Oh man!
Damn.
Oh man! There's a certain person we know that used to say "kill, kill, kill." Oh man!
Yeah, the army was a little too much for him.
A little too much for him. He ended up smoking the grass, and they got his ass and turned it into grass. But moving on from that and answering the question, from what we understand, around 7 brigades have been raised, and that's a rough estimate because there's a supposed 9 brigades total out there, but we only really know about 7 brigades that have been raised brand new and are comprised of veterans of the Ukraine war, and also given brand new modern equipment from the West that'll be a part of the modern offensive, well, the modern counteroffensive that we'll be seeing here soon. That's what we understand at the moment. But of course, it could be 9 brigades. But as far as we know about 7 of them for certain. Could be 9, and they're mostly equipped with Western equipment and arms that will be helping them to conduct that offensive. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Mark. And I, of course, have to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. You are an OG LSA member, Mark. And not only that, you've helped this channel out a great deal in helping it to keep it running, and I thank you so much for appreciating this channel and finding it worthwhile to support, because without folks like you, this channel would not be possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one. I gotta be honest with y'all. I gotta be really honest with y'all. I can feel when I drink less coffee, like I feel like I'm out of steam even now, because I drink like less coffee, considering that we have to get up at like, what is it, like 8 in the morning tomorrow, probably.
Yes, actually, I forgot all about that. We have to wake up that early.
Yeah, we have to wake up really early in the morning. So, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I shouldn't drink that much coffee because I'm going to be up till 3 or 4 in the morning and I have to get up at 8. And then I didn't drink a lot and now I'm feeling it. And I'm like, I regret that. I regret that a great deal. I regret that loads. I don't want, I need more coffee. That's what I'm thinking right now because I'm like even feeling weak, like I'm shivering at me timbers and stuff. But anyways, thank you once again for the support, Mark. I hope that does address that fairly well. And Mark said he heard that there were 20 brigades being raised. The last time I talked to Starsky, which was somewhere, I believe, in March. Let me think, actually. No, that would have been around May, actually. No, wait a minute, hang on. Let me think. No. It was late March. Yeah, it was late March. Last time I talked to him, I believe he said something about 7 to 9 brigades being raised. I do see that some people are saying that another YouTuber out there says that it's 20. I can't really say whether he's wrong or right because the number may have risen from the last time I got that number from Starsky, which was about 2 months ago, to now. So it may be 20 brigades now. But 20 brigades would be pretty large because if we pull up how many soldiers are in a brigade, around 3,000 to 5,000 of them in a U.S. brigade, according to the Department of Defense. 3,000 to 5,000. So if you take the low-end number, that means that they're raising 60,000 new soldiers in brigades, and if you take the higher-end number, that means that they're raising nearly 100,000 soldiers in new brigades. And that's a fairly large number to equip with arms, equipment, supplies. They are pretty much growing the Ukrainian army, at least by its pre-war numbers, by almost 40%. So it would be a very large growth to do an entire 20 brigades, but it's not out of the question either. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that that is a massive undertaking by the Ukrainians. If it is 20 brigades, who really knows? Well, last I heard it was 7 to 9, but it may have gone up. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Mark said 8 a.m. is early, and it is early for me. Because over the war, my schedule has slowly shifted from where I would go to bed right after the stream, because somehow I was able to manage that, to now I have to drink so much coffee that I end up staying up till about 3 or 4 in the morning. So if I got up at 8, I would only be getting like 4 or 3 hours of sleep a day, maybe even a little bit less than that. So my sleep schedule has pretty much just been pushed back, and now I get like, I think 7 hours of sleep, maybe 6 hours of sleep a day, but I wake up at like 10 or 11 in the middle of the day, sometimes even 12, but that's really pushing it because there's a lot of stuff to be done, so I usually try and get up around 10 or so. But yes.
Hell, 8 used to be considered late for me until the stream took over.
Man, I remember before the stream started, it was normal for me to get up at, you know, like 8 or 9 in the morning too. And then during college, this was the horrendous thing in college, is that sometimes my classes would be incredibly early in the morning, like 8 in the morning. So I'd have to get up at like 6 in the morning, and I went to sleep at like 3 or 4 in the morning. So I'd only get like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. and I would have to get up and go to college and then be up all day and then run this stream and pretty much repeat that for that entire semester that I had that 8 o'clock in the morning class. And that was a nightmare. That was also when I was like getting donuts for folks because I was trying to like, you know, wake up. So I would try and eat because that helps me to wake up a little bit. So I get donuts so that way I could have like 1 or 2 for myself, and then I give away the other dozen to, well, the other 10 of them to like the rest of the class. But yes, getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning for us, relative to how late we stay up because we have to run the stream, it is very early for us, especially because of the amount of sleep we'll be getting before that. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Mark. Very interesting question, by the way, and I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea about what the behind-the-scenes kind of life is like back here. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is from Turco, who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much for that support. And he says, excuse me, it is possible Enforcer to bomb only the railroad Crimean bridge without blowing up the other one.
It is possible to do that. We did see that the road bridge was almost completely destroyed and there was minor damage to the railroad bridge. But considering their distance to each other, it may be impossible to just damage the railroad bridge and completely leave the other road bridge unharmed. So they both may end up getting damaged, but I think you can kind of mitigate which one is almost completely destroyed and which one's lightly damaged. I guess that's the best way to look at it. At least as far as an answer goes. So I think it is possible. It's just that even though they will not be hitting and trying to destroy the road bridge, it most likely will receive some kind of light or moderate damage from whatever the Ukrainians attempt to do. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible. And without folks like you, where would we be? Where would we be, Vinny? We would be nowhere. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Red Lamani, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you very much, Red, for that support. He says, hey guys, I'm sorry I can't be on the live streams much because of my job. I always watch the day after, and veal chop parm for everyone on me.
What is that?
I'm not sure. I got to say, it caught me off guard a little bit, though.
And what's it called again?
It's called veal chop parmesan, I'm assuming. Parm.
Let's see. Well, what does this look like? Oh, that looks...
Parmigiana.
Parmigiana. Oh, but that looks pretty good, actually. I'm not going to lie. Wait a minute. Dude, that kind of looks like, that chicken we make. You know, that chicken parmesan? Well, it's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I'd give this a try. Oh, God. Cake Boss ate it. I would not give this a try. I'm just kidding. There's nothing wrong with Cake Boss. I'm just playing around. But, I mean, like, hell, that looks pretty good. I would honestly have some of that. And also, it is perfectly okay to not be here on the live stream. We love for folks to be on the live stream. We love for folks to make pilgrimages to the live stream. We're like, hey, I got it live. And I'm like, hey, nice to see you, buddy. Welcome on board. But still, I completely understand that folks have work schedules and lives outside of the stream that they have to attend to. And I'm happy to hear that you've been pressing on really strong at your job. And for that reason, you have been able to watch the stream. I hope things are going good for you on that end. And I also thank you so much once again for supporting the stream and enjoying it enough to support us and help it to keep on running. And also, I hope that things have been good for you. Also, nice to hear you watch the streams when they become videos. You know, some people call those replays. I call them streams when they become videos. But nonetheless, it's good to hear you still been sticking through with us, although it has not been live. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And long live the LSA! And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and our next one goes to Rob Eisman, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you very much, Rob, for that support. He says, depleted uranium, Du, is 1.67 times denser than lead. Tungsten is 1.7 times denser. Depleted uranium is self-sharpening and pyrophoric. Spontaneous ignites when air and sparks are present. And depleted uranium costs 130 per kilogram. And the tungsten costs 142 a kilogram. And the prices are close and vary.
And I thank you so much for the support, Rob, and also sharing with us some interesting facts about depleted uranium versus tungsten rounds. And it's very interesting to hear that depleted uranium is better in almost every way. It's even slightly more economical, going off of those numbers. And it is a great ammunition. A lot of Western countries have ended up implementing depleted uranium forms of ammunition within their armed forces, so that way their tanks can get that extra little bit of armor penetration. And also, its damaging effects are quite good. The Russians tried to make a stink a while ago when the British gave depleted uranium ammunition to the Ukrainians in saying that it is radioactive. The problem with that, though, is that the Russians also use depleted uranium ammunition. It's just that they didn't want to tell the public in Russia that they do, and they would be on the same playing field as the Ukrainians in that regard. Also, one of their complaints was that it poses a health and safety risk to Russian tankers because if it goes through the armor, it could leave radioactive dust particles in the air. And to my dismay, for some reason, putting Russian tankers in obsolete tanks where they're going to get blown up and killed apparently isn't a safe and health risk to the Russian army, but a depleted uranium shell going through that tank is, which is wildly weird to me. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Rob, and sharing that interesting little tidbit of information with us. And I have to say, that shell is heavier than a block of lead, and that thing is denser than a block of lead. That thing is denser. You know, Matthew, I was about to go into a spicy joke there. It was about to be really spicy. We were about to put the cumin on it. But I have a feeling that a joke wouldn't go too well. You know what, Matthew? I'm going to have you...
That lead is thicker than a bowl of oatmeal.
Oh. Oh, man. Oh, you don't even know where my joke was going to go, man. I'm feeling like texting it to you so that way you can review it. But
send it to review.
Oh, you know what? Let me type it up real quick, y'all. We're going to send this one to review. Let's see. And there you go.
Nice little ding. Now that's pretty spicy. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but you know,
well, I have a feeling. I have a feeling that the spice is going to be quite nice in a little. So we'll refrain from making those jokes for now, because the spice will be quite nice soon. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Rob. I hope that does address that fairly well. Sadly, can't say these kind of jokes on stream. I can only pass them along to Matthew, so that way you can look at them, get a laugh out of them, and know what they are. But, you know, they are spicy. They are very spicy. But with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. She says, release the Ukrainian children. And I couldn't agree more.
And I thank you so much for the support, Marion, and I certainly agree with that. The Russians should release those Ukrainian children without any stipulating conditions. They should just be released for the humanity of it. Yet, nonetheless, the Russians aren't really folks who concern themselves about the humanity of the thing, and they still are committing crimes against humanity by having kidnapped those kids and brought them on into Russia, where they're abused nearly daily by the students in the school, the teachers, and the citizenry of those areas. And so with that, thank you once again for support, Marion. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a $40 super chat from Flash1. And thank you very much, Flash, for that support. And also, it's good to see you once again. And he says, hey there, I don't always get to watch the live stream, so I sit outside with the fire going, having a few scotchins, and read the chats. Unfortunately, YouTube has made so I can't read the chat anymore, but I love the show.
And I thank you so much for the support, Flash, and welcome back, by the way. And then also, I thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and enjoying it a great deal. I don't know what you're drinking out there, but I hope you have a fun time drinking it. And also,
Scotchin.
Scotchin? Is that like scotch?
Yeah, Scotchins. Probably.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. But I hope you have a fun time drinking that. I'm so happy to know that folks do enjoy this stream a great deal, and a lot of y'all, and I'm very happy to know that enough of y'all do appreciate this channel enough that you'll find it worthwhile to support and help us to keep this thing running behind the scenes. Because folks like you, Flash, do make this channel possible. If it wasn't for folks who went out of their way to decide to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. Y'all are the only way that this channel has been able to support itself and continue to run. All of our short war summaries are ad-free. All of our streams are ad-free. Every single thing that we do on this channel has been ad-free. And I got to thank you so much for helping us to ensure that that's possible and to help us to not only continue on doing what we do, but to also keep this special kind of way of running this channel alive. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for the kind words as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AKA I'm not really sure what the last part is. It's a bunch of letters, and I'm trying to make sense of if there's a word in there. AKA something gun. Hopefully they'll tell me what that is. But they put in a $15 donation, and thank you very much for that support.
Hey!
And they said, you'd think the United States can send laser weapons to Ukraine to defend the skies more.
They possibly could, but that may be a national security issue because if for some reason Russians were able to get close to the thing, they may start to learn how our laser technology works, and they may be able to send that information on to the Chinese, which could then start to copy our weaponry. So it may be a bit of a national security risk, but it's not entirely out of the question considering that they will be stationary static defense systems or maybe mobile defense systems that are placed around Ukrainian cities and in relative safety for that reason. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Mike D, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Mike, for that support. He says, tomorrow is National Donut Day. I'll be buying a box of donuts for all my coworkers. So tomorrow, the two of you visit your local Moms and Pops donut shop and buy a box for yourself and a family and your family on me.
Well, thank you for the support. And we will be making sure to enjoy some delicious, tasty donuts. We love donuts. Donuts are good. Donuts have been good to us. We love donuts, simply put. And we will make sure to get some donuts. I haven't had donuts in a while, actually, ever since I was on my donut craze in college and ended up getting donuts for all of the classes I was in. I was actually in a lecture class back then, and so I ended up getting donuts for like 100 people every single time I showed up to that class. And a lot of people enjoyed that. A lot of people did. Did it help? I think so. I think I probably ended up getting a really good grade in that class. I got like a 99 point something in that class, and I think it was entirely because I brought donuts every day. Because everyone else made like 80s and low 90s, and I was like a 99.5. But anyways, what?
Don't
What?
flex on them.
Oh, odd flex, but okay. Anyways, I do thank you so much for the support, and we will be making sure to get some donuts. And also, Matthew, did he want a live chat?
He did not, but he did want us to get a donut.
And we will. We will. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops. And thank you very much, Psyops, for that support. He says, the LSA is a place for everyone that is pro-Ukraine. And yes, sir!
And
thank you for that
yes,
support.
sir! And thank you so much for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. And this channel is for anyone who is pro-Ukraine. If you are someone, regardless of who you are, that supports Ukraine, you are welcome here. Regardless whether you're a Russian, regardless whether you're one political affiliation or the other, and we don't get into that stuff here either, we are welcome. We welcome anyone here into the LSA. Regardless what you are or who you are, if you are pro-Ukraine, you are welcome here. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. With that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, a shout out to Terrence Custer. He puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Terrence, for that support. Sadly, no comment to address, but Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Terrence Custer. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. Now, you didn't leave in a comment. You didn't. All you did was leave in support. And that means a lot to us when folks just send in support. But it does make us sad because we can't answer a question. And we always want to try and give something back for the support y'all give rather than just the show itself. But I do thank you so much once again for support, Terrence, and appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support and help us keep it running. And thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel for a long time and being a Lee Spring Army Old Guard. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Mr. Attitude, who says, take a question from the chat.
Whoa, hey, watch it with the attitude. But still,
Whoa.
thank you. Whoa, what happened, Jack? I tripped and fell today. What the hell? But anyways, thank you so much for the support. And we will be making sure to get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, I've read a report of Tu-95 strategic bombers being airborne, and do you have any other news about that?
Tu-95s are airborne a lot of the time. I wouldn't really have any news on that specific instance because sometimes they're airborne to launch missile attacks. Other times they're trying to test the U.S. Air Force's reaction response in the northern Arctic area around Alaska and Canada. So it could really be anything for that Tu-95 to be airborne for, but I don't really know any particular information about that specific incident. So with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, and I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I know right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Sharon Flynn, who says, if you can't have your cake and eat it too, can you only eat cake if you don't have a cake? And how does that work, LOL? And take a chat question.
And I thank you for the support. And honestly, I've had a problem with that parable for a while, because I sit there and I think, how the hell can you have a cake and not eat it? You know, and some people have explained to me, if you eat the cake, you no longer have a cake. But that doesn't make any sense, because you have to have the cake to eat it too, you know? That's like saying you can't have dinner and eat it. Well, what the hell is the point of dinner if you can't eat the dinner? Like, that's the whole point of the dinner. I have a huge problem with that saying. It doesn't really make any sense to me at all. Like, if you have a cake, what's stopping you from eating it? If you don't have a cake, then obviously you can't eat a cake. You don't have one. But if you have the cake, you can obviously eat it too, because it's there. And that's my problem with that phrase, because people go, well, you can have your cake, but you can't eat it too. It's like, yeah, you can. That's what the cake's for. It's right here. I get a fork in my hand, and my fat little ass is going to eat that cake, okay? Like, you know what I mean?
Damn, son.
I mean, like, I'm just telling you. I'm putting it out there the way it is. I'm telling you. But anyways, listen, I'm always into, if you have the cake, you can eat it too. Why not have both? You can have the cake and eat the thing. And if it's gone, well, you had your cake and you ate it too. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because, you know, and also Activista said, don't be daft, why be so rude? But you cannot both consume it and still retain it. You gotta choose. No, that's not how it works, okay? Because you can get your supper, or whatever the hell you call it, supper, dinner, and then you can eat it. You know, like, that's how that works. You know, like, you can't not have the cake and then eat it. You can only have the cake and then eat it. There must be a sequence of events that occurs, and one of those must be that you acquire the food stuff that you will be consuming. And so I never get that phrase. I just never get it. Because it's like, yeah, you have to have the cake to eat the thing. You know, like, and why in the world would you, like, the whole point of getting the cake is to eat it. So what's the point of the phrase of saying you can't have your cake and eat it too? Because the whole point of getting the cake is to consume the cake. So you have now acquired the cake, you have the cake, and you are now going to eat it too. So, like, that's honestly how I view it. That's honestly how I view it. But that's just me. That's just me. That's my opinion on the quote. I think it's a little silly in my opinion. I think you can have a cake and eat it too, because that's the whole point of getting the cake. You know what I mean? But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel keep on running. And to the one sad person who said that was lame and unsubscribe, I'm so sorry. We'll be making sure to change the show to your tastes from here forward. I'm sure you're quite offended, because apparently
Get off the stage.
Boo, get off the stage. Apparently talking about cakes was too much. Into that, I think they probably do stuff their face with cake every day. That's the only thing I can come up with. It's like, why the hell would you be offended by that? Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question. It's actually a live chat question that was requested by Sharon Flynn, and it goes to JC the Music Man, who says, Enforcer, do you think that Zelensky believe if Ukraine joins NATO that Russia will immediately stop fighting? It doesn't sound like a bad idea to me.
I think the Russians would continue on fighting if NATO joined, because they would probably just view that as escalatory. Whether they would lose or not is another question. I think the war would continue on, though, even if Ukraine did join NATO. In fact, I think that would put a timer on the Russians if they're very set on keeping Crimea. They may put a timer on them where they end up feeling like they have to use nuclear weapons within a very small amount of time to try and end up winning the conflict, which could end up escalating things far further than we could have ever anticipated. So I don't think it is a good idea to bring NATO into Ukraine now. I think it's a good idea to wait for the war to be over and then bring Ukraine in. But that's just my opinion. And so with that, thank you once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have another super chat from Psyops. He puts in a $10 donation this time and says, Let's see here. He says, tungsten balls, now not just found under Zelensky, and get yours today.
And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And tungsten balls. Zelensky's got 2 of them. And so with that, thank you once again for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is also from Psyops, who puts in another $10 donation. He says, did you know that Matt is single? And also, I can't confirm or deny on that. That would be opposite. He says he's looking for the type of person who won't. Now that's too graphic. He says, you know true love. And force a Matt to shoot your shot.
And I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. We cannot confirm nor deny whether either of us are single or in a relationship. That's an operational security thing. And also, that discourages the simps. And that would be very unfortunate to discourage the simps. Now, another thing.
Flip away, baby.
Now, another thing, Psyops, is that we like to keep it clean, Psyops. We like to keep it clean. But of course, I do thank you for the support, Psyops. And of course, supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running while I feel like I'm going into a literal haze over here. That coffee did not hold me over long. But still, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from JJ Powder, who says, how many tanks do you think they have left, and how many troops do you think Russia has?
They probably have about, I would assume, less than 1,000 operational tanks left. And I would also say that they maybe have around 250,000 Russian soldiers active in the theater. That may be down to around 200,000 at this point, because we do know that according to the numbers on both sides, the Ukrainians have ended up outnumbering the Russians in total frontline, well, more so fighting forces that they are able to levy within the war. So we know that the Russians probably have around 200,000, maybe frontline soldiers, and maybe less than 1,000 operational tanks. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have another $10 super chat from Psyops. And let me read this one real quick. He says,
That's very interesting stuff he said right there.
did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Oh. Let me send this over. It's a nerd riz, as he calls it. Very interesting. Let me let the enforcer look at that.
All right, we're going to take a look at this here real quick. All right. I think we won't be able to read that one, sadly. I don't think we'll be able to read that one. But I do thank you for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. And very interesting nerd riz. Oh, we got the Rizzler up in here. But still, thank you once again for the support, Psyops. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from StrayCat241, and thank you very much for that support. They said, my truck has leaf springs, LSA. Cheers from Southern California, and I do masonry construction. It's sad to see all the historical buildings destroyed in Ukraine.
Hey!
And I have to agree.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I would have to agree. It's sad to see historical buildings being destroyed, considering the value that they have culturally. And also, very interesting to hear, your truck has leaf springs. A lot of trucks have leaf springs, actually. And what's funny is that we ate our foot on that one, and that became the name of our community, the Leaf Spring Army. I thought leaf springs were obsolete, but I was wrong. I was very wrong. Oh, man, I'm telling you, bad wrong. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, all the way from a Mason in Southern California. Not a Freemason, maybe, but a Mason nonetheless. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and thank you for enjoying this channel enough and appreciating it enough to find it worthwhile to help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And of course, CK Bold, we will. And of course, thank you very much for that support as well. Blah, 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 blah. But we're moving on to that live chat, which goes to Super Grover, who says, did you hear about the U.S. military drone controlled by AI that killed its operator during a simulated test? And I did hear about that, by the way. It's really a bad idea to let some kind of computer control and make the firing decisions on a weapon like a drone. I don't know who thinks that's a good idea. A human should always be in control of that when it comes down to whether or not you end a human life, and machines should not make that decision. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree, but I don't really know a lot about this specific story. I have not heard about it, so unfortunately I'd have to declare ignorance on the story, but from what Matthew said, that's not a smart idea to give the decision to kill over to a machine. That just doesn't make any sense from any perspective. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again, CK Bowl, for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a 5 and says the Ukrainian army will soon bring the hurt to those missile-slinging cowards.
And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, can you reread that one again? Whoa, reread the line.
Let's see here. He said the Ukrainian army will soon bring the hurt to those missile-slinging cowards.
I will agree. I think they will. In fact, there's not really a lot to add. I just agree with that statement completely. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Hopefully they will do that eventually. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Havlin Tuff, who puts in a 5 and says if the galvanic protective system failed and the fire caused saltwater intrusions, it would cause a lot of severe damage to those bridge pillars.
And I thank you for the support, and that is true. Salt water can end up causing a decent amount of damage to the pillars of a bridge, and maybe that may be the case. If that is the case, then we may see that bridge collapsing here soon, at least within that particular span. After it took them literal months to get this thing back up and running, which would be great and poetic in a way, that as soon as they get it fixed, it is now unfixed. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you for sharing that info as well.
And the next one goes to that guy from Arizona, who puts in a 5. It says, when the lag starts, type LSA, LSA, LSA in the channel.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I'd agree with that. It, of course, spites the people who are doing the attacks, and I think it's always funny. You see, because we have people where we believe these attacks are coming from. It's from a specific group of people who hang out on a Discord, and they sit over there every single day and admit to things that are just crazy, like trying to mass report our channel for stupid stuff like terrorism and things like that. And I don't think they understand it, but YouTube actually looks at those reviews. Like if there's a mass reporting of them and they actually look at it and they see if it is promoting terrorism. So, you know, if it's not the case, they don't act on it ever, which is really dumb from their end. And also, ever since that started, the amount of times that we're getting lag attacks on our stream is increasing. At the beginning of the stream, it was almost once every 5 to 10 minutes, which is an incredibly fast interval for that stuff to happen on. So if you do want to show those people it is not going to work, and it didn't work at all tonight, put an LSA in the chat, because I think that is one of the best ways to show them it just won't work. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, and also being a Lee Spring Army soldier.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from John Clark. He says, type LSA.
And, yes, I will type LSA. Put LSA in the live chat, everyone. I'm going to do it. Yes, LSA. There we go. Put it in the live chat, children. Let's let them know that nobody will win against this immature group of children. That's another thing they say. I like it. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I would love to thank, like we always love to thank, all the folks who, you know, act like they fell out with the channel, Matthew, that are over there always giving us information. It is always good to know that so many of them have ended up pulling one of the most interesting psyops ever. I mean, it's interesting. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, some of them are here with us tonight, by the way, because they don't know I can see their name in the chat. But up next, we have a $5 donation from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "What's the only submachine gun made in Australia? You're the pure chat OGs of the LSA. Also, you owe me a live chat question."
And I thank you for the support. We will be making sure to get to that live chat. Sorry about that. And also, the only submachine gun that I can think of that was made in Australia is the Owen SMG, which is a very interesting little submachine gun. Honestly, I would say it is somewhat similar in its crude-looking design to a Sterling. Well, not really a Sterling, but more so a Sten. But this is a very interesting little gun here, because this was made by a farmer's son in Australia. kind of out of so largely like spare parts, just odds and ends stuff that he was trying to make. And he ended up making this thing, and it ended up being a really good submachine gun. It served in Australia all the way until about the 70s in the Australian Army because it was just that good. It is a very weird looking gun, and the magazine does feed from the top down, which is an interesting design, and that means that the sights are actually, I believe, leaning to the right side of the gun. So it's a weird sight, and a left-handed shooter couldn't really use it because the sights are only made for right-handed shooters, I believe. But it is still a really neat little submachine gun. A really cool one, actually, and I like it a good deal. And I've never shot one of these before. I would love to shoot one of these, though, for sure, because it's just so weird, and it's so interesting, and it's also like an Australian icon. Also, another submachine gun that's really cool is the Sterling SMG, which a lot of people don't really know about. It's like the improved version of the Sten that came out nearer to the end of the Second World War, or I believe right after the Second World War. This was supposed to be the improved version, and I believe they ended up using these in the Royal Navy. I have shot one of these things before, and they are pretty good. They're pretty neat, actually, and the recoil is not that bad, so kind of a fan of these things, and I would say they're comparable, at least in terms of like the tube-like structure they appear to have, like an SMG has right here. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Margaret Hemsley. I hope that does address that fairly well, and let's make sure to get that live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question goes to Evanescent Wave, who says, why over the last month has there been a big increase of Russian artillery losses?
The big increase, from what we assume, is associated with a heavy, I guess you could say, emphasis in the Ukrainian artillery on counter battery operations. It appears that they may be using their drones and artillery in unison to find Russian artillery pieces and then destroy them. And that may be why we're seeing a marked increase of artillery losses, is because the Ukrainians are putting a lot more emphasis on counter battery now than they are frontline artillery support, at least from what we're understanding. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Margaret Hemsley, for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Celtic Warrior Poet, who puts in a 5 and says Moldovan president, against the huge protest for her to resign, gave Zen, accompanied by Prime Minister of UK, permission to enter 2 Russian zones.
And can you reread that one again real quick?
Moldova's president, against the huge protest for her to resign, gave Zen, accompanied by Prime Minister of UK, I think he meant to say Zelensky, permission to enter 2 Russian zones.
And I thank you for the support, and that's pretty interesting here. However, I would say, while the British statement on that is important, in all honesty, and of course, the Moldovans are kind of in a similar situation to Ukraine, but they're not really a powerful enough country that their words will be respected in that regard. Countries like Germany, France, the UK, and the US would take precedent over the Moldovan statement in that regard, and most likely the United States statement would trump everyone else's statement if they did or didn't want the Ukrainians to go into Russian territory. But at the moment, it appears that they are doing just that with the Russian nationals and the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK. So it appears that the Ukrainians are doing what they wish, and it appears the Moldovans are also backing up what they're doing. And so with that, thank you once again for support, and also I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for sharing that with me. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Marc-Andre Burnett, who put in a $3 super chat. And thank you very much, good sir, for the support. Sadly, no comment that Mark left, but we do appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Marc-Andre Brunette, and of course helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so thank you so much once again, and I do hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dupper Bob, who puts in a 2 and says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much once again, Dupper Bob, for that consistent support. Dupper Bob has been here pretty much ever since the beginning of when this channel got monetized on YouTube, and has been putting in super chats every single day, around $2 to $5 every single day that we've been running. And I got to thank you so much once again for support, Dupper Bob, and helping us to keep this channel running, because consistent support like that each and every day does really help this channel to keep on rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like you, this wouldn't be possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 2 and says, "Here's my 10 cents worth once YouTube and tax takes out."
And I thank you for the support, and that it kind of is reality. The whole thing is that we end up making 70% of every super chat. So if you send in $1, YouTube takes 30 cents, and then of course taxes also take out a good bit as well. I would say probably around another 30 cents out of that. So with that, thank you once again for the support. It still helps us nonetheless, though, and I do thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and we are fresh out of Super Chat questions. So once again, thank you all very much for that support. And of course, we're moving on to our live chat questions and the Morse code. And tonight, I only saw one decoder. It was C-Fay. He said, "The Morse code for me was cut off at the beginning. This is what I got out of it. Another border invasion happened. Are pissing their pants right now."
That was... That's the sound of money, and that almost was the whole message. It was something along the lines of the Russians are crossing the border, the Russians are pissing themselves again. And so, yeah, that is actually the correct message. You just missed like a word or two in it. And so, congratulations on doing that. You were our only decoder we saw tonight. There may have been others, but they may have been missed in the live chat. But thank you so much once again for getting that Morse code message correct on the 463rd day of the war. And so with that, we are on, of course, to the next one, but thank you for doing that.
All right, and our first live chat question goes to Angela Lemaire, who says, question, what do the Ukrainian Marines do with the logs once they're done carrying it?
They drop it and they leave it for the next group of recruits. That's at least what we understand, because it's a training log, and that's actually something we also do in the U.S. military as well, is that the U.S. military will use those logs as a team-building exercise, so that way everyone learns, in a way, that everyone in the unit that they're in has to carry their part of the log, their weight of the log, or else the entire unit will fail. So it's a team-building exercise in a way, on top of physical fitness and form. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Matthew, I can't believe that we made it into the live chat segment this early on. I mean, it is only 11:20, and it seems as though we might be having a bit of a shorter stream tonight. But with that, we're on to the next one.
It's okay today because we got to wake up so early tomorrow. It's going to be like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But the next live chat question, actually, we're going to go to the super chat real quick that just came in. It's from Bill Fry, who put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Bill, for the support. He says, at Enforcer Matt, cheers. I've been watching for a few months as a former meme wee of the U.S. military and a current contractor with the defense sector. I try to keep up with what's going on in Ukraine and keep up the good work.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for your service as a meme-wee and the U.S. meme, the meme-wee Corps. And I'm just kidding. Autocorrect probably got that one there. It's the Marine Corps, actually, former Marine of the U.S. military and a current contractor, I would believe, and correct us if we're wrong there. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Bill Fry, and enjoying this channel enough and appreciating it enough to find it worthwhile to support, because folks like you do make this possible to keep running. And also, I'm very interested here. You have quite a long sounds history with the military, being a part of the U.S. Marines and also a contractor in the defense sector. You've pretty much been involved in national defense, as far as I would tell, your entire life. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying this stream and supporting us, so that way folks like us can keep this channel running and, of course, keep the thing rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like you, it wouldn't have been possible. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for the kind words, and we will be keeping up the good work. And hopefully, this Sunday, we'll be able to pass $1 million raised in support of Ukraine, which I think will be the ultimate testament to all of the good work that not just Matthew and me have been able to do in helping this channel to keep on getting out the news each and every day, but all of the good that y'all have done as well. And I think that while, of course, folks in the live chat aren't able to speak on air, it's just Matthew and me that speak on air, y'all are truly the unspoken, literally, heroes of this channel. Y'all have been able to help these fundraisers out in unbelievable ways. And as far as we've been able to tell, no other channel on YouTube has gotten to the level that this channel has been able to in fundraising. And that's entirely down to the viewers and soldiers of the Lee Spring Army. And on top of that, y'all have helped this channel to keep on running as well. And this channel is extremely unique, especially in the way we run. There's no other channel out there that runs on a completely ad-free premise. Not really one I can think of out there, especially that does live streams. A lot of streamers out there, they end up getting sponsors, they end up running ads, they end up doing something that really monetizes what they do. And there's a lot of Ukraine war streamers out there that have been sponsored and do run ads. And of course, I can't really blame anyone on doing that, because obviously people have to support themselves because it is a job. And YouTube is not a quick and easy thing to do. We end up in, well, let's see, I think we both end up working like a combined total in between the both of us of around 100 to 110 hours a week. If you combine both of our hours into this every single week to keep this thing running. So it's certainly not a cakewalk, and I understand why people need to do that. But at the same time, I do kind of feel it's a little tacky in some ways, especially when you hear that today's killings and today's massacre of Ukrainian citizenry is sponsored by a coffee company or a VPN or something like that. You know, nothing wrong against those companies, but it doesn't really have a good look to me. And I think it's amazing that not only have we been able to fundraise so much, but y'all have helped this channel to keep running in a very unique way. We don't rely on sponsors agreeing or disagreeing with what we say. We don't have to have a sponsor segment and extremely monetize what we do. We don't even run ads in this stuff, so you don't even get those ridiculous Chevy ads or like Whopper ads before these streams. You just get it right onto it, and you can get right onto the short war summaries as well. And y'all have been able to help the Lee Spring Army to remain sponsor-free and ad-free the entire time this war has been running for 463 days. Is truly unique and special in that way, and I can't really think of any other channel that runs like that. And y'all have been able to make this such a unique channel because of that. We don't bow down to sponsors, we don't bow down to ads, or what YouTube would find to be ad-worthy. We end up doing what we want, and y'all support us where we're able to do that. And there's not really any other channel out there that runs like that. And I got to thank y'all so much for making this such a unique channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Bill, for being one of those people who help us to make this channel so unique and to keep it running the way it has been running ever since its inception in the first hour of the war. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is another super chat from Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Psyops, once again for that support. He says, reminder to all LSA, do not dox anyone or leak classified info. There's a reason War Thunder forums and Minecraft Discords exist. XD.
Thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And I would agree. And it's not a smart idea to dox yourself, and it's not a smart idea for other people to dox folks. I think that is... like on a personal level, it's not a smart thing to do on the internet. So, you know, don't ever sit there and go, I think I'll be fine, and then put out your home address, because I promise you someone will take advantage of that. There are very sick people, bad eggs, who wander around on the internet, and they do messed up stuff to people. Like, you know, they could send you crap in a box or something similar like that, and who wants crap in a box showing up on their doorstep on a hot summer's day, you know, fuming and crap because they put out their address online. You know, you could even get worse. And I think it is very detestable for folks to act like they're not wanting to dox people and then encouraging their group to go and dox someone. I don't respect that at all. And I don't respect folks who do that. That's a very low thing to do, is to go out there and dox folks because you disagree with them. Because, you know, because people always sit there and they think it's cute or something, you know, until they get doxed. And then they're, oh, this is wrong. You know, it's like, yeah, it is wrong, obviously. But, you know, anyways, getting on from that, I think we're both perfectly fine with being doxed, because we know if anyone tried to show up here and cause us trouble, I think they would probably learn that that was a bad idea pretty quickly. And also, on top of that, another thing that can happen with getting doxxed is folks can get swatted. And that's when, you know, someone calls up a local police department and tells them that someone's outside, like, shooting at the neighbors or something, and then the SWAT team shows up to your house. Luckily enough, though, we were able to counter all of that before it even happened, because we ended up having to bring a suspicious box from the PO box to the bomb squad, and I ended up getting us put on a list. A call list, so that way if anyone ever tries to have us swatted, they'll actually call us first and ask what's going on, and then they won't send out the SWAT team, they'll just send out the sheriff's department to come out and check on us. So we already got that base covered, so we don't have to worry about that. But still, doxing is a very dangerous thing online. Make sure to try and keep your personal information safe, and make sure that folks don't know a lot about who you are or where you live, and also make sure that if people do that to you, you're prepared, so that way you don't get swatted or have someone coming around and trying to mess with you or hurt you or anything. But with that, hope that
You know what people don't understand about the swatting thing is this is what I don't get. People say it's such a big deal and everything, but even if you call the police department and make a false report, even using a fake number or a Skype call or something like that, they can still trace it and find you like where you are. So when people try to make anonymous calls, it never quite works out.
And also on top of that, if you do it across state lines, it's actually a federal crime, which usually the punishments are more severe in the...
That's hard time.
Yeah, that's hard time. You do not get appeals in the federal prison a lot. So if you get 20 years in federal prison, you're pretty much going to end up serving 20 years. It's not like state prison where you get 20 years and then it's like 7. No, you're serving 20 years in federal prison. And on top of that, depending on the federal prison, sometimes you could go to a prison that's far worse than a state prison, or depending on the crime, like if it's a white-collar crime and you're going to federal prison for that, it actually ends up being posher than a state prison. But nonetheless, false reports like that are felonies, and if they're occurred within state lines, it's a state crime. If it occurs across state lines, it becomes a federal crime, and of course that is far more serious than it being a state crime. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running, and also informing people about the dangers of doxing. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Butchie777, and thank you very much for that support. They said, excuse me, living in Birmingham, UK for many years, Spaghetti Road Junction was on the point of collapse due to concrete cancer. The Kerch Bridge is going to have serious problems soon, and Slava Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I love how everyone in the world has a story of a bad bridge somewhere around them. Like, believe it or not, speaking of Birmingham in the UK, here in Birmingham, Alabama, like in some of the first years we lived here, the bridges in town, because all of the roads that you see here highlighted in yellow, this is Highway 280 right here, this is Interstate 59, and, well, actually, Interstate 59 through this area turns into Interstate 20, both here around Tarrant and also over here near Fairfield. But anyways, it's Interstate 20 for the most part that goes through this area. And then Interstate 65. All of these are actually on suspended bridges that move through the city of Birmingham and this entire area. And a lot of them were in an incredibly bad state of disrepair, so bad to the point that it started to become a public safety hazard with the amount of road traffic that was on them and sometimes just sitting still on top of them. So they actually ended up tearing out this entire area of interstate right here and rebuilding it, and they actually tried to revamp it into a park. But I gotta be honest, the road noise in this area, also I think this is actually, nope, this would be new actually, so there's still some of the older bridges left in this intersection. I'll be trying to show y'all some of the newer ones, which are way over there, but you can see them. And they put light bars under them and stuff. They try to make it a really nice place. But, like, the honest truth is, you can't really make that nice of a park with an interstate bridge or an overpass right over it, because the road traffic noise is just so loud. It's not really an enjoyable park. They still did a good job at it, though, and it looks really nice. But that used to be a massive concern in Birmingham, because these bridges, while looking okay, they're not the best, but they're not terrible either. The ones that were over here that were replaced were in even far worse shape than these. They looked like they were rusting from the inside out. It was bad. But with that, thank you so much for the support and sharing your story about your bridge in Birmingham in the UK. And I wonder where the Spaghetti Bridge is. I'm guessing it's this down here, because that looks like spaghetti to me.
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Don't touch on my spaghetti. Let's take a look at it. Let's see if that does look like a spaghetti bridge. It kind of does look like it. Also, Zesh. Dude, what you smoking, man? I'm smoking that raw Zesh. What the hell is that? It's plant death or something like that. But anyways, really interesting to hear once again, Butchie 777, and thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd agree with those kinds of concrete structural issues on the Kerch Bridge. I'm sure we'll either see it being taken out of action again or collapsing. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is a $5 super chat that goes back to AKA Something Gun once again, who says, that is good to carry a log just in case they need to carry someone.
And I thank you for the support. That would be fairly interesting to strap someone to the top of a log. But that may be important as trying to get the idea of how to carry a wounded soldier out there, or at least the weight of him, maybe. That may also be another thing about the log, but I don't really know. That sounds pretty plausible, though. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So up next, we have a $2 donation from Philip Fixes. And also, I sent you the comment. I'm not really sure what it means. It's probably innocent, but I'm scared.
All right, and so let's take a look at it. Matthew's scared. And we're waiting. I don't know what that means. I'm kind of confused. I'm kind of confused, man.
He's scared.
But I would honestly have to say I'm kind of scared too. But I thank you so much once again for support, Philip Fixes, and helping this channel to keep on running. We will be making sure to get a live chat in and stay, but thank you once again for the support. I hope that kind of addresses it fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Well, actually, the live chat.
And also, by the way, real quick to address something I saw, Zero Jab said Fed time is way easier than state, and I would have to agree with you on that one. State jails, and I tell you, those penitentiaries in the state is rough. I've been to a couple of them when I was interning, and goodness gracious, you would much rather be in a federal prison than a state penitentiary of any sort, to say the least. But with that being said, Enforcer, would you like to comment or move on to a live chat?
Oh man, I think we're gonna have to move on to a live chat. You covered it perfectly, and so with that, let's get to the live chat.
And the live chat goes to C-Fay, who says, why is it that we hear planes shot down, but it's always 0 here in the stats, but 1 the other day?
We hear about planes being shot down because, you know, and you always see the numbers showing up whenever there's not a report of planes being shot down. And here's the twisted secret many people don't know about the casualty report. It's called the June 1st casualty report, but this is actually the May 31st casualty report. I know, it's shocking, but let me explain why. They compile the casualty reports from May 31st, and by the time they compile those reports, it's coming out on June 1st. So then they just move the date forward, and they call it the June 1st casualty report. So when we go tomorrow and we see the June 2nd casualty report, we're actually looking at what the casualties were today while we're covering this news. That's something we really don't say a lot on stream, because, you know, regardless of whenever they're publishing it, whether it be yesterday's casualties today, or regardless, or whether it really was today's casualties today, they are still tangible losses the Russians are taking. And that's why you'll see that there will be reports of planes shot down today, and they don't show up until tomorrow's casualty report, because that's how the casualty system, according to Kyiv Independent, is structured. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Pretty good question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jeff Lieberman, who says, how about an Israeli Iron Dome set up for Kyiv?
We've heard about the Israelis wanting to send an Iron Dome. They never have over the whole war. So I think that we could probably see one in the future. It's just that the Israelis kind of waffle on that thing so much that it probably will never become a real reality. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ricardo67, who says, do you know if GLSDB has made it to Ukraine? Saab and Boeing stated June to August delivery, and maybe Ukraine is waiting for the GLSDB. Imagine 200 tubes of HIMARS launching these in one go.
We heard that the Turkish ground-launched small-diameter bombs made it in limited numbers earlier on. I don't know about the ones that were going to be sent by Boeing or Saab. I don't think those have arrived yet, so they're probably still waiting on the delivery of those, and they will certainly be devastating once the Ukrainians begin to use them. No doubt whatsoever. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Casey Best, who says, I feel like it's not as much about money and the cost of each, but the fact Russia happens to down an F-16 and somehow get technology from it, I could see that being a factor maybe.
And that could be a factor, and that's probably why the United States is wanting to send older aircraft from other countries like Poland and the Netherlands, because they will not be the most exemplary examples of the F-16. They'll be older examples, and while they are older, they're still going to be effective against the Russians. It's just that they won't be giving away national secrets if they manage to get shot down. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to, let's see here, Turin, who says, did you see the Mad Max style video asking for Abrams?
I did not. So sadly, I'd have to declare ignorance on that one because I never saw it. But with that, I hope we kind of addressed that. Not really well, but we did address it. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the Sunken Grave, who says, would it be more beneficial to Ukraine if Prigozhin remained alive because of the unrest he's causing for the Russian government and military?
It may be, actually, and that may be another play he's trying to do to make sure he stays alive, is that he's just trying to play both sides so he doesn't end up on the chopping block. But honestly, he's starting to outstay his welcome in Russia, and a lot of people are surprised that he's even survived this long doing what he's been doing. But that may be the case. I would say that's not out of the question whatsoever. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Pellet Pushers TV, who says, I'm curious, at Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, what is the biggest mercenary army in the history of man?
The biggest mercenary army in the history of man that I can think of would be, and we're talking about overall numbers, I'm trying to think here, what in the world would be the overall number largest mercenary group? I'm going to try and take a guess and then we'll Google it here. I think the largest group would have actually been the Swiss mercenaries of the 15th and 16th centuries, because pretty much the entire nation of Switzerland was employed as mercenaries. In fact, they were such a prolific group of mercenaries and a very well-known one for what they were able to do with pikes, that they were even referenced several times in English literature, even on the English Isle, where Shakespeare actually called them Switzers, which was kind of like the name of Swiss people before they became Swiss, is that they were Switzer people, or Switzers, plural. And so, now let's pull it up. The largest mercenary group in history. Oh, it was the Swiss Guard. I got it right. Hey, look at that.
Oh.
Dude, someone give me a trophy, and I want to see some people in the live chat saying I'm a narcissistic asshole, because I got that right before we even pulled it up right there. Now, that is something. That is something. I don't even know how the hell I did that, but that's pretty neat. And so, with that, also, there's another answer down here in Quora that says the elite shock troops of the Eastern Roman Empire, the Varangian Guard, were the largest. But that is an actual part of the, if I'm correct, the Byzantine army. So they're not really mercenaries, they're a part of the army. But as far as mercenaries go, I believe the Swiss were the largest mercenary group ever in history, which is kind of funny because no one really thinks of them as hardened fighters nowadays. They are usually known as peace-loving people that just kind of hang out in the mountains and don't really get involved in anything. But these folks right here, they were stacking bodies in the Middle Ages. I mean, like, everyone in Europe wanted to buy these guys and have them used. Their prominence on the battlefield would finally be ended by the Landsknechts of Germany, specifically southern Germany, which is not that far from Switzerland. You see, Landsknechts used a great sword. I forgot the name of it. It's not a great sword. It has some... It's a Zweihander. I'll show you all that. The Zweihander. Right here. And these swords are massive. I believe they're like 6 feet long. I mean, like, they are as big as the people that use them. And the whole purpose of a Zweihander was to break pikes. And specifically, the pikes of Swiss mercenaries. And so it was a specific strategy that was employed by these guys that made Swiss mercenaries largely obsolete in, I guess you could say, the medieval fashion people know about. After that, the Swiss would continue to fight, but they largely became French aligned. They weren't really the mercenaries like they were in the Middle Ages, where the highest bidder would get their services. They would largely become part of the French army. And I'll actually try and show y'all Swiss, French, the Swiss, let's see, Swiss French army. Let me see if I just find y'all a uniform like this. So during the days of the French Empire, the Swiss Guards were a part of the French army as well, and you can see their uniforms right here. Very interesting, because a lot of people associate red with the British, but as you can see right here, the Swiss also used a massive amount of red. In fact, if you look at this uniform right here, that is once again from the Swiss Guards of the French army in the 1780s, you would be amiss, really, to tell that these guys were different than some of the British line infantry units because their uniform is almost the same, except for some minor details, and you wouldn't be able to tell those details from the average firing distance of around 100, 200 yards. You wouldn't be able to tell that, so you would have to base that off of the colors that they flew above their unit. Also, here is the Swiss regiment. I believe this would have actually been during the Napoleonic era right there. And then after the Napoleonic era ended, which they were largely on the side of France and Napoleon even during the French Empire, they would then be declared a neutral country by the Congress of Vienna in 1815, which was a meeting of all of the major countries in Europe, and they decided how to balance the continent so that way a war like the Napoleonic Wars would not happen again. And so they decided that Switzerland being a part of one side or the other would actually tip the balance of power too far in one direction or the other, and so they ended up forcing the Swiss to be a neutral country. And so the Swiss then wrote that into their constitution in 1815. Later on, they had the Sunderbund War, which was kind of like a war in between the Protestants and Catholics of Switzerland. And then they would go on to form the Helvetic Republic, which is a confederation of the cantons, which is what Switzerland is made up of. That's like the equivalent of a state here in the United States, but in Switzerland they call them cantons. And the 24 cantons would all come together to create the Confederation of Switzerland, also known as the Helvetic Republic, and they would continue to exist in that exact same form all the way until the present day. But that's a little bit of a story of the Swiss and like their story after they were the most prominent mercenaries in all of Europe. But with that, hope that does address that question fairly well. Really crazy to see I've somehow got that right. That was like a shot in the dark. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Doug Bell, who puts in a $50 donation.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Doug, for the support. And also, welcome to the Leaf Spring Army, because you are new. And he says, new here, but I've kept up with the Ukraine war since day one. I'm disappointed in our country, USA citizens. I would expect more from us.
And thank you so much for the huge amount of support, Doug, and helping this channel to keep on running. And welcome to the Leaf Spring Army. And also, it's good to hear that you're new here. And I thank you so much for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. And I would say that I haven't really been disappointed in the United States a lot, in my opinion. I think the United States has done fairly well recently, at least as far as the Ukraine support goes, not talking about any other avenue. But I would say that I would expect the support to be a lot faster. That's been a constant complaint I've had throughout the war, is that whenever we guarantee support, it seems like it takes forever for it to get over there. Now, I have been disappointed on that level, but I would never really say I'm disappointed in the citizenry. I would say I'm more so disappointed in the government, because the government, of course, is the one that actually executes the will of the citizenry. So it's not really more so a failing of the citizenry, as more so a failing of the government itself in making sure that this arms and aid is making it over there so slowly. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Doug. I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion and how I view it. But thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel enough to support us and help us to keep this thing running, because folks like you make it possible. And without folks like you who did support this channel, we would have never been able to exist, and we wouldn't be able to keep on existing. You help us to keep the lights on, aka pay rent, which I had to do today. It hurt. I cried. And you also help us to pay for gas and go to college and all those other things that behind the scenes we must do to be able to keep on doing this as a job. And I'm greatly appreciative for your support to this channel. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Sabs yet again. He says, "Wasn't the Manchurian? Excuse me, goodness, wouldn't the Manchurians during the War of Three Kingdoms be a PMC? If so, I think that would be it. I'm still rusty on my Chinese history."
And I thank you so much for the support, and I hate to say it, I don't really know a lot about the War of the Three Kingdoms. It's a big deal in Chinese history. It's kind of like the War of Heavenly Ascension in the 1860s, which was also a big deal for the Chinese. But sadly, I don't really know a lot about the War of the Three Kingdoms to say whether they were considered a mercenary group or not. If they were kind of like their own country with their own borders and they were fighting on the behalf of another, that would make them more so of an ally. But I don't know the exact story of the War of the Three Kingdoms to know whether they would be a mercenary group or not. However, I can tell you that the War of the Heavenly Ascension was absolutely insane, and I think something around like 60 million people would die in that war, 60 to 100 million. That's like the rough estimate, and that happened in the middle of the 1860s and 70s. No one ever talks about it, but like loads died. It was a pretty horrendous war, and the crazy thing was is that it was started because some Chinese guy who was never able to pass the civil servants exam had a fever dream at some point, and he claimed he was the brother of Jesus Christ, who had been crucified and died literally 1800 years before this guy was ever even walking on the earth. So how is he a brother of Jesus Christ? I have no idea, but that's what he claimed, and he ended up getting around 60 to 100 million people killed. So you can see that in China, if you say something like that, you can end up causing almost the entire country to get killed over. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for the support, Sibes, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and back to our live chat questions. We have one from AF Kaplan, who says, regarding the cracks on the Kerch Bridge, could the prior explosion on the bridge be a factor in the current cracking that is being seen?
It most likely is, but the thing is that regardless of where it came from, it appears to be significant structural damage, because that concrete only has so much strength, and the rebar inside of it can only hold it together so well. And seeing stress cranks like these that go down the entire length of the pillars, I'm no structural engineer, appear to be a very bad sign that the cracking may have made it all the way through the center, and the weight of the bridge is now starting to split this column into two down the center. And one day that fracturing and breaking will become severe enough that the columns will probably just implode on themselves, and then the actual bridge layer above it will then just go down into the sea. But it does appear to be pretty serious. And if we have any structural engineers in here that would like to talk about these stress fractures on these pillars, I would be very interested to hear what y'all say about these, because they look severe to me. But once again, I don't really know about the structural strength of concrete, or specifically the concrete mix that they used making these. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we were on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Andrew, who says, what does RDK stand for? RVK could be Russian Volunteer Corps, but RDK is what?
I don't know what RDK stands for, actually. They always have RDK on the flags, but it is the Russian Volunteer Corps in English. But in the Ukrainian or Russian version of the flag, it has RDK on it. I don't know why they have the D. That's probably just the way the word volunteer is spelled in Russian, is that it ends up with the letter D at the front of it. But I'm not really sure why. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another super chat. This time it's from KG, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, KG, for the support. And excuse me. Pardon me. KG says, I have it on good authority that the Zitan people in the Alpha Centauri system are planning on sending some advanced direct energy weapons to Ukraine. If I'm wrong, likely. Take a live chat.
And I thank you so much for support, KG. That was the most roundabout way of asking for a live chat. And so we'll be getting a live chat. So what do we got?
And the live chat question goes to Mike Holloway. He says, if helicopters can fly in Ukraine, so can prop-driven combat aircraft. Sport aircraft can be put to good use there also. Balloons.
And I thank you for the support. And that is an interesting idea. But I have a feeling that light sport aircraft would probably end up being the victim of machine gun fire pretty quickly. One thing that is always a big fear in the modern world is that a vehicle could fly so slowly that it can actually become the victim of just aimed infantry fire. And that's actually a pretty big deal, especially when you're looking at the First World War aircraft. They actually started to come under a lot of rifle fire back in the day, and that used to be a pretty common tactic to shoot them down. The French actually developed a doctrine, and let me see if I can show y'all. French soldiers firing at biplane. So let me go to the images here, and maybe I can find this for y'all. There is a picture out there. It's a very well-documented picture, probably one of the most famous examples, and I can't really find it, of French soldiers laying in a field, and they're aiming up into the sky. And the reason why is that aircraft like that fly like 90 miles an hour, of course the sport aircraft are probably more in the 200s range, but aircraft that fly that slow, they can actually end up being hit by just normal rifle fire aimed by the blind eye without really an anti-aircraft gun. Because they're flying so slow, they can end up being the victim of that. And that's why we see that Ukrainian helicopters are firing off rockets, unguided rockets, miles away from the front lines and giving them a lot of elevation so that way they can get some range on them, because it would be very dangerous to fly a slow-flying helicopter like that onto the front lines because the ground fire would most likely take it down. And that's also why in Afghanistan, although the Mujahideen and the Taliban and are poorly armed and really only had AKs and RPGs, a light amount of rifle fire coming from the ground could force Blackhawks moving into the area to evacuate the wounded to leave and not pick up those wounded soldiers, because a small amount of rifle fire can bring them down, and rifle fire is incredibly dangerous for slower moving aircraft because it actually has a pretty good chance of hitting. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this, also for the question, and I thank you so much, KG, for sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we addressed it fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and our next one goes to Larry C. He says, Ukraine artillery seems incredibly precise. I'm wondering if they're using laser homing copperhead rounds with drones doing the laser targeting, and I haven't seen any reports of that.
I think we answered this question like last night.
Are you sure?
I'm very sure, because I remember the copper-guided rounds question from last night.
Maybe we did.
I think we did. Is that a layover from yesterday?
No.
Man. Come on, man. What are you talking about?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Man, you know
Not
that
from last night.
You know that meme? Please, if even you could fraction, it's something like, if you could even handle a fraction of my power, and then the guy goes, if you know what I'm talking about.
I think, but not really.
Okay, I was thinking that sounds like a no. But anyways, with that, I thank you for the support. And we actually answered that question last night. They may or may not be. I think that was the end answer to that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat. This one is for this one. Blah, 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 blah. Wow. This one is from Protect Oneself, who puts in a £10 donation. And thank you very much for that support. They said, no question. Just want to shout out the great work that Enforcer Matt and the LSA community do. Love Ukraine. If you want, take a chat for a question from the chat.
And I gotta, and I gotta thank you so much for the support, Protect Oneself, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would have to thank you so much for the kind words, as not just to us, but to the Lee Spring Army as well. I got to thank you for enjoying it that much and appreciating enough to support us and help us keep this thing running, and also giving a shout out to pretty much everyone here. Now, in honor of the Lee Spring Army Trophy Committee, I would love to give the Lee Spring Army a trophy for being a part of that trophy committee, because being a part of that trophy committee is deserving of a trophy, because y'all are handing out trophies. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Slava Ukraini. And we will make sure to take a live chat in honor of that question. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Philip Stevens, who says, have you seen the latest photos of the Kurds Bridge? There are huge longitudinal cracks running down the support columns. It looks to me like it's falling down, and do you agree?
I would agree. We were actually talking about that earlier tonight, and it appears that the stress fractures are severe. You can even see here that there is a visible gap in between the two sides on this pillar, and it does appear that they may be having massive structural issues with the bridge, at least. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I hope we answer that live chat fairly good. And thank you once again, Protect Oneself, for sponsoring that live chat, and also the incredibly kind words as well, because it really, we're really appreciative that a lot of folks enjoy this channel a lot, because it's unbelievable to think that 463 days ago, I had no idea that this would be what I would end up doing for 463 days since the war began. And I didn't know that so many people would end up rallying around this channel and following us on our journey as we continue to cover the news of the war and then do things we never expected to do, like the fundraisers. Like truly, when you think about it, it's absolutely unbelievable, and unbelievable especially from Matthew and my perspective, our perspective, because who in the world would have ever thought that a 21-year-old and a 22-year-old could ever run a YouTube channel that would be able to raise $1 million in support for Ukraine? I just don't know. I mean, like that's honestly amazing to me that we've been able to do that at our age. You know, it's certainly something that will probably be the high of our lives. We'll probably peak at this point in our lives now and never do better than this. But if we do, that'll be pretty good. But still, it's absolutely amazing to me. And I thank you so much for the support, Protect Oneself. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on, one second, we are on to the next one.
All right. And with that being said, we are moving on to our next live chat question. And also, just by the way, I only have 2 live chat questions left in the spreadsheet. We've run through 25 of them because we ran out of super chats very quick tonight because the news ended very, very quick as well. So our next live chat goes to Turen, who says, what about AI F-16 in Ukraine? Is it even possible?
And can you reread that one again?
What about AI F-16 in Ukraine? Is it even possible?
AI? Oh no, I don't think that would be possible because AI technology like that would be so advanced it would certainly be a national security risk to send that to Ukraine. So I don't think we would probably be sending that. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and just a disclaimer, you might have to do your whole little spill because I'm out of live chat questions except for one.
What? No. No. Wait, man,
Yeah.
you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. It's only 11:55.
I actually got one extra one. David Gurr just sent one in.
All right, grr. So with that, let's move on to the second to last question of the night.
He says, Dunkin' or Krispy Kreme?
Dunkin' or Krispy Kreme? If I had to pick Krispy Kreme out of the two of them, because Dunkin's donuts, I mean, they're not that good. I don't really like Dunkin', honestly. And I remember I went there one time, and we asked for a, what the hell was it? It's like a bagel or something. It was like a breakfast bagel. And then the guy said, you want eggs on it? It came with eggs. You know, it's like, what the hell do you mean? Yeah, obviously we want eggs on it. Like, I didn't get that. And also their, like, food's okay, and their, like, donuts are meh. So I'd go with Krispy Kreme out of the two, really. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so with that, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Fuyuma. And they said, my question is, why does France send stupid four-wheeled heavy transport vehicles yet already stuck in mud on its blueprint? Germans already showed it's better to have half-tracks in times of World War II.
Hey, don't you crap on that VAB. Those VABs are fabulous, dang it. The reason why they send them is because that's what the French use across their entire armed forces. That's like their transport vehicle, their armored car. So that is really just what the French had to send. You know, it would really be tough, especially economically, for the French to go and design a brand new vehicle and then pay to have brand new ones built and then sent to Ukraine. So they just send what they have out of their army. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. It's been a great honor to know that so many of y'all have come here tonight and, of course, enjoyed this stream. And if y'all did, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like button, and make sure to comment as well because, oh, wait a minute, hang on, we got another one. Hang on, Matthew, let's get to that one real quick before we go through the whole spiel.
And we actually had one more super chat question come in. This one is from Colleen Emsley, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Colleen, for that very generous support. She says, thank you so much for what you guys do. Fishing season on so busy with company in my house of glass, LOL. First day and loads of voila, LSA.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Colleen Emsley. And of course, welcome back. And I hope you're having a fun time up there at Calling Lake. And also, thank you so much for enjoying what we do. We try our best to make the stream as entertaining and interesting to watch. And also, I bet you fishing season is busy. And I don't know what the House of Glass thing means. If you have a House of Glass, now that is pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what the heating and air conditioning would be like that, would be for that, though, because I have a feeling that would be really expensive. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support. Great to hear you're getting a lot of walleyes. That's also a guided bomb. And also, LSA, long live the LSA. And thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And once again, we have rounded out tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run this stream every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, making sure to cover the past 24 hours of the war. And so, with that, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraini!
And good night and Slava Ukraine. See you all tomorrow.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Pantsir! русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.